Hello and welcome back to Rosebreak Podcast. Today I am joined by Saeed Esmaeli and Kemp. Saeed is a very accomplished wrestler in his own right, but really renowned for his teaching and his coaching ability. He has many affiliations all across the UK where he helps MMA fighters and grapplers and wrestlers on their wrestling ability. He's worked with some very, very big name guys in the grappling community, Leo Vieira and Buchecha, guys like that, to name a few. So renowned for being a really incredible coach and a great wrestler himself. We also have Kemp. Lee is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He is a 3-time world champion. He has multiple national records, did incredible success at high school and at collegiate level, and he even defeated the legendary wrestler Dan Gable. So he's a Hall of Fame wrestler. Very, very privileged to have both of these guys on the podcast today. We even joined by Lee's son, who's trying to follow in his dad's footsteps and become a successful wrestler himself. Very, very cool to have these guys on, and we had a really, really interesting chat. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Check it out. Cool, guys. Firstly, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Daniel.
Okay, so let's talk about how you guys met to begin with. Let's get a good story to start off.
As I was growing up, my dad obviously was a wrestler for Iran.
Yeah.
And different wrestlers' names was coming up, Dan Gable, all the different names throughout the history. I mean, my era was like John Smith. My dad always used to go, there's a guy called Kemp. Kemp, he's the best of USA, So I was growing up, I was hearing the name, And on Facebook, we met, one of my accounts, but Facebook eventually shut that down because I had Esmaeli Wrestling on there.
Yeah.
Now it's a page.
Yeah.
Then progressively, Coach Kemp posted one of his quotes. I'll just leave it for him to share that part.
Yeah, go on.
It's the quote is, "Have you paid your rent today? Success is never owned; it's rented.
Sure.
And you have to pay your rent every day."
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm getting goosebumps here.
Yeah.
So I was like, I like this, And because of my, psychology background and my academics and stuff, so I was resonating. I was like, this is really good, So I went to share it as one of my, pictures and stuff. Then I thought, what? I always reference people, whatever I do. My teaching is based on that as well. So I said, okay, this is Dan Gable's shot. This is Alexander Medved's shots and stuff like that. So I thought the quote, I've messaged Coach Kemp. I said, look, I saw your quote. I'm going to be sharing it on my Instagram. Do you mind and stuff? So we start talking there. Progressively be here.
That's awesome, man. Like, how cool is it that I know people bitch about social media and stuff in these days, but how cool is that you guys can connect up from a childhood hero and now you're here sitting and going and doing seminars with him and stuff like that. That's
very
cool,
much, yeah.
Wow.
No, but he's our senior coach now.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
That's very cool. Very cool. So what are you guys doing in the UK? Let's get straight into it. You guys are doing seminars over here?
Do you want to start this?
Well, that initial, meeting of Saeed over the internet led to a lot of conversations, but we learned about each other, and he invited me to come to the UK for a seminar. And, I do seminars all over, but I've never been to the UK,
Awesome.
So I said, well, I would love to do it. My son's in school right now, and I don't feel comfortable leaving him at home for 10 days. And Saeed, being the kind of person he is, he said, well, why don't we just bring him over too?
Nice.
So I said, really?
He was hoping to get left home alone for 10 days, right?
Well, I think
Damn it.
the only time we could fit that kind of time in would be during my son's break from school, which is now. And I think he had some other plans for spring break, but I think now he realizes this was a great opportunity to come to the UK. But so we came over, and everything Saeed said would happen. It's
Awesome.
kind of a cool thing. We had an amazing series of seminars already, and utilizing his connections in the UK. He's been doing seminars for years. Yeah. So his name is real strong in the UK, and I think it should be strong even in the US because of his connections with BJJ. It's known now, known fact. Even Joe Rogan on his podcast, he's starting to have wrestlers on, like pure wrestlers, like Ben Askren. Ben Askren comes from wrestling, but now he's transitioned and he's an undefeated fighter in the UFC. And most of his wins incorporate heavy skill sets in wrestling.
Yeah. Do you speaking of that, do you follow MMA a lot?
Not a lot, but I follow some of the wrestlers that are in.
It must
MMA.
be interesting in the same way that I imagine a lot of jiu-jitsu guys who aren't interested in MMA are following Michelle Nicolini or Mackenzie Dern or Damian Maia and stuff like that. They kind of want to see how, because the whole point of the MMA is how do the styles work, right?
Well, the whole story of now we got this term infused wrestling. The reason I use that term infused is because I don't like the term wrestling for MMA, wrestling for BJJ. So it narrows it down to just a double leg attack. And reason being, there are positions, as you know yourself, wrestling gets utilized. Say wizard position, you see it in BJJ, you see it in wrestling. So I work with Dean James, 3 times world champion tile boxer. So we use the clinch, and we just use the concept of pushing a hip back, popping
you would
a hip.
never think there's a connection between the grappling and the striking
huge.
arts.
Tony Mayers is the most respected tile boxing coach in the world. And he sends his students to me now to work with the clinch. And it's not just pure wrestling. We use the concepts, where people just concentrate on, say, double leg or just technical, based, where we're looking at positions, we're looking at the biomechanics of the body. And I think that little bit comes from my dancing background, because a lot of people don't know 27 years of dance. So when I'm teaching, I'm looking at the body movements. Then I can identify whether a BJJ player or a tile boxer or wrestler, I can relate it to each other, how they're moving. And popping the hip back, head drops. So the clinch kicks in, you do a little rotational work, then head comes down, then you prepare the shot for the knee to come in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, so that's how Infused came in, but obviously came from initially with the MMA guys I worked in.
Yeah.
And
so you've done a lot of work with the MMA and Jiu Jitsu guys?
Initially, I started with MMA after my father died. Charlie Joseph from Trojan Free Fighters. At the time, there was second biggest team in Europe. Then within one night, he said, he came to my session. He said, Saeed, I want to have a look at your session. So all the boys came down, Ronnie Mann, all those lads, Matt Sellers, Paul Sutherland, the first generation with those lads. Then he offered me to be the head wrestling coach there, and a week after I was in Pride FC. I was cornering.
Wow.
It's that quick it happened. And when we came back with the BJJ, although I had a first connection was with Salvatore Pace, and that was 25 years ago. He used to come to our gym. He used to go to Carlos Lemos Jr.'s class, then he used to come and do wrestling with us. But me teaching wrestling to the BJJ world, it was Browley and Roger Gracie. They were the first guys to hire me, and I went to Birmingham, did a seminar for them. So that was the beginning. So progressively, then I worked for Trojan. Obviously, Chico Mendes came the head of Europe for Czech, and we worked together. So Leo Vieira was in England, was preparing for ADCC. So then they asked me to coach Leo because his opponent was also a wrestler. So again, we was concept based. In one of the interviews we did with Czech Matt, he stopped the interview and said, "No, Saeed, you changed my world of hand fighting." So my concept of hand fighting within BJJ's changed because of your approach to it. That was when they offered me to become a head wrestling coach for the Czech mats. That's when I got exposed to BJJ, and I think my familiarity, and I watch a lot because of my dancing, so movement. That was my exposure to BJJ. And progressively, it's got to this position. I fully understand the position. I know how to apply it,
Well, of course, the human body is the human body. It doesn't matter whether you're doing Thai boxing or MMA or jiu-jitsu or wrestling, right? If it moves and the body moves in a certain way, it moves in a certain way.
Yeah, and obviously the popular culture doesn't see that at the time. So this is what we want to embrace: more positional, more concept, very much micro moves. Maybe Coach Kemp can explain what we were doing. What is, I think, between us, the similarity is bringing us, is drawing us together. He teaches very much in this very similar sort of manner. He looks at the positions in very similar. So do you want to expand on that? How we were teaching?
The concept of success in wrestling or any movement activity requires excellence in the smaller movements.
Yeah.
A lot of the smaller movements are often overlooked because they're tedious, they're boring, I want to just get to the end result, the big throw or this or that. Even with the double leg, they want to see a blast double leg and see the end result where the guy falls down. But there's so much that goes on before you even make contact with your shoulders into your opponent's hips. So a lot of the technique that I teach is focusing on all the little smaller movements that make the actual move successful. So I noticed that Saeed would comment about some of my videos because we were communicating back and forth, before we got to this point coming here, and I noticed he was, very interested and excited and appreciated it, and not many coaches do. So we related on that, and that, on that subject alone, just to be able to teach in that way. And then I saw videos of him teaching, and we saw that similarity. So, a wrestling move or any kind of move, anybody can show that. A younger wrestler that just learned how to do the move could show you how to do the move. But it takes a truly knowledgeable person, a master, a black belt, or whatever you want to call it, that master level individual. It takes that level individual to show you the finer points of it. And every discipline in the world is that way. There's some smaller intricacies to any endeavor that the masters know, and that's why they make a lot. That's why the CEOs of a major company make all the money. Hopefully, because they're smart enough and they know exactly what they want. They have the vision. And
the devil's in the details.
Yes.
So it's kind of talking about, because you're talking about these, and I totally understand. I as well. I see too many people focusing on the bigger picture, which kind of works kind of more so when you're a beginner, because obviously if you're a beginner fighting against or wrestling against a beginner, it doesn't matter so much. But as you get higher and up, you get the diminishing returns from just looking at that, and then you have to kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller into these micro movements. But you're saying that a lot of your understanding of that comes from your background in dancing, your ability to look at the movement. So I was wondering, I know that you started wrestling relatively late for Americans. For British, they're very early. But you guys are starting. How old your son started? How old he was when he started wrestling?
He started late as well.
Oh, really?
By today's standards.
So what's standard for an age that someone
6 or 7?
And then what age did you start?
15.
Yeah, so that's
14 actually. I was 14.
But these people have 8 years advantage on the mats with you. So kind of, did you have any background in sport beforehand that would give you the base, like Saeed had the dancing? Is there anything that gave you a base that allowed you to excel through the wrestling so quickly?
I would say not, other than growing up in the streets of Cleveland. Cleveland at the time was a little rough during the 60s. In America, the civil rights movement was going on then. 1968 was kind of a turbulent time period. But then I wasn't involved in organized sports through my childhood. My parents moved from Cleveland to a rural farming community 30 miles northeast of Cleveland. So I went in just one summer from Cleveland, inner city, very, all black basically. I moved to basically a white community in Chardon. But it was farming and big, strong farm boys and football, and they wrestled. And so I went out for organized sports in 7th grade for the first time. But it wasn't wrestling, it was football. And then basketball was what I was familiar with coming from Cleveland, so I went out for the basketball team. And evidently I wasn't very good at basketball because I never played.
Sure.
So then 9th grade, I was frustrated with basketball, and I was starting to develop then. I was starting to get more muscular, and very similar to my son. His whole body changed when he got to high school. And so the wrestling coach, or the gym coach, the gym teacher, was also the freshman wrestling coach. So he recruited me to wrestle.
Yeah.
So I wrestled on the freshman level. I had success. I lost a couple matches, so that kind of kept me interested. The next year, I made the varsity, and I had a 500 season, as you can imagine. My first year wrestling against more experienced high school wrestlers. And we were in the larger schools, and even though Chardon was out in the country, we still were larger schools. So this is where the story really begins. I was just an average wrestler, 500 season, has many wins as losses. What changed is I went to a camp with Dan Gable. He was the instructor there. So
he was already Dan Gable legend at that point.
He was about 2 months away from winning his Olympic gold medal.
Wow.
He had already won the World Championships in 1971. And it's important to note that that summer was the summer of 1972. That was the summer after my first year of wrestling, 1972. So I went to this camp.
And everyone else at the camp must have been wrestling for a lot longer.
Well, yes, for sure. But understand, back then, wrestlers weren't starting at 6 and 7 years old anyway.
Okay.
That's a phenomenon that's
more recent.
More recent.
Okay.
I guess when I say recent, I guess 30 years recent.
Yeah.
But since I'm 60, when I was younger, it just there wasn't clubs and there wasn't things like that then. So I guess the thing that changed for me though, but those 2 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there was wrestling. And so I didn't wrestle any of those years, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And you get a lot of the foundation done in those years. Now wrestlers are starting in like 3rd grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Maybe even 2nd grade. Some of them. I mean, there's little kids tournaments where there's 4 or 5 year olds wrestling in the States, and it's amazing. But anyway, I was very hungry, I guess, for something in my life, and success takes a lot of different forms in terms of the motivation for success. No one's success comes from the same motivational place.
Sure,
I don't think. People that I talk to, they have some very unique things that motivate them. I mean, it could be something as simple as when James Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson, he talked about a promise he made to his mother who was dying. Obviously, that motivation wasn't my motivation, but for him, it took him to that level of beating someone that people thought was invincible. The reason why I brought that up is because I met Dan Gable that summer. He inspired me so much from him being there. He was in the peak shape. He was still Dan Gable though.
Yeah.
Because he was beating the Russians. He had won the world championships. He had won all of his college matches, and the Russians didn't like losing to an American, so they made a public statement that they would find a Russian. In all the Soviet Union, back then it was all the republics of the Soviet Union was one.
Yeah.
So
they got a big field to grab from.
Oh, that one representative.
They would have dominated.
Yeah, that one representative was really tough. Now they split it all up, but in some ways it is tougher because, you may beat the Russian, but you've got 4 or 5 or 6 other people who would have been 2nd, 3rd, 4th in line.
But they're first in their respective countries.
Yes,
now.
and they're still tough. Each one of them could be an Olympic champion. So in some ways, it's as much tougher to be a world champion today. But anyway, the very top guy, and they found that guy, and Dan Gable beat him. So I watched that at home and became really focused, and I wanted to be like Dan Gable. That was how it all started. I did everything that he taught us at the camp. And those are the micro moves we're talking about.
He had that. He was teaching in that style.
Absolutely. And Dan Gable's coach was there, Harold Nichols. He was an older man at the time. So if you remember the Rocky movies, right? Rocky had that crusty old coach who knew all the secrets. Well, Dan Gable's coach was Harold Nichols, if Harold Nichols was alive today, he'd be over 100. I mean, that's how old he was even back then.
Yeah.
So I learned from all those people, and out of the whole room of wrestlers, probably the 200 wrestlers that were in that clinic, I was probably the only guy that really focused in and believed everything he said. Every motivational seminar I've ever gone to, all the people who are teaching, they say, if I could do it, you could do it. They give you the secrets. That's why you're there. You're taking notes. But everyone leaves those seminars, those clinics, and they forget about what they've learned, or they put their notebook away that they took all the notes in. I kept it. I kept those notes for years. So I went back and to finish that story, I don't get all in every little detail, but I went back the next year and I was undefeated. So in less than a year, from the season ending, going to a summer camp, going back in my junior year, I was undefeated and beat the defending state champ.
And you credit just kind of you said the difference between you and everyone else at that camp was the fact that they their focus was wavering a little bit, but you were 100% invested in what the coaches were saying. Was that the difference?
The details.
Yeah.
I get the things that were being shown. I was focusing in on the details of what was being shown, and maybe that's just my personality.
And I think it was something you spoke about yesterday, about totally surrendering yourself to what you're going to do,
Yeah.
you know, and that's something we were saying about what commitment really means, you know. As, Adam and I were going to work together, but this is something we were focusing on. I think Coach Kemp done the same thing. He surrendered himself to the details, what, you know, deconstructing. That's what I do when I'm teaching. I deconstruct the technique.
You got to have you got to have a lot of trust in the person that you're taking information from, isn't it? Because for you, that word in particular, like surrendering,
Yes.
you've got to have a huge amount of trust that, you know what, if I'm gonna give 100% of my commitment to this one person.
Yes.
I hope this is the right person to be doing that to.
No, for me, that's really important what you're saying, Dan, because one thing I do work with my guys is the word uncertainty.
Yeah.
People generally don't have, not in a biblical sort of term, faith in terms of I don't know what's going to come at the end of it, such as winning, where I see winning as a byproduct of the baby steps or micro steps you take in towards it. Once you cover it, as Coach Kemp did, details in it, then the unattended side effect, if you may call it, of the byproduct of the little steps you took towards the championships, you know, and that is details, isn't it? And I see Coach Kemp in that sort of sense, you know.
Yeah, you know, so obviously, like, there's this big emphasis on the details and
belief
and believing in them and investing 100% in them. And you say now that you believe that it was that focus on the small details and taking in everything that the coaches said that allowed you to go from average wrestler to state champion within a year.
Let me interject one thing. Now that you're saying, I'm hearing the details sometimes are small. One of the things he said, he emphasized an incredible work ethic, which very few individuals on the planet will want to do what he was teaching us to do. I think that went over everybody's head except mine. So I went back and I started training harder than I trained as hard as I saw him training. And obviously he was the hardest working athlete in the world. He was identified as that in the Olympic Games in 1972.
I think he's still, even outside of just wrestling, he is referred to as one of the hardest working athletes ever.
Yeah.
You know,
he gets
even
referred
to this
as
day.
the coaches of all coaches.
Yeah, yeah.
So I believed in all that, and I just did it. Not many athletes will train that hard, and I train harder. And there's a faith involved in it because a lot of athletes don't want to commit that much because what if I don't win?
It's hard.
What if I don't win? I don't want to commit because your life becomes
hard, right?
Pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, and just to give you an idea, you probably can look up the stats with Dan Gable, but out of 21 years of leading men on a team as the head coach, 21 years of college coaching, they won the Division I national title 15 times.
Wow.
That's just unheard of in any sport. That proved, and then the other 6 years they didn't win, they were second or third. And only losing first out of like a half a team point kind of a thing. So he got very average wrestlers to win national titles because they just did what he told them to do. Dan Gable is the type of guy, I give you, this is an example off the top of my head. When I was a young wrestler, if he told me, Lee, stand in that corner right there, and then he forgot he told me to do that,
You'd still be in the corner.
a week later, where's Lee? Oh, he's still in the corner. I just believed. I surrendered and believed what he told me.
Was that because it was Dan Gable?
Yeah.
Like, if you had got another coach who, let's say hypothetically, there's another guy out there, he has everything that Dan Gable has except the name. Would you have? Do you think you would have? Like, you know, because this
that's a great question. Well, I think it's a person's belief system because there are athletes that will believe in a coach that may not have the credentials.
100%.
Yeah, credentials are important.
But there's credentials in this Dan Gable, right?
Yeah.
Can I add something to this? I think we spend a lot of time together. You know, there's a difference between subjective viewing or objective. And Coach Kemp is... He can see what's right and wrong. He can see it as a personal feeling, but this is objective. He really, you know, and I personally think he just views everything. He breaks me down when I'm teaching, you know?
Yeah, but that must come from years of experience. You can, you know, if kind of what you're saying is he could tell that regardless of the fact that it was Dan Gable.
He chose Dan Gable, I'm saying, for a reason.
Yeah, but there's no way that you could have known that what Dan was saying was legit when you were that early in your career.
Well, I wanted to learn from the very best.
That's what I'm saying.
And he was the very best.
That's what I'm saying. It would be...
and that was objective.
Yeah.
It wasn't subjective.
Which is one of your sayings now, right?
Yeah, because
Well,
I have a quote or a little message I talk about. Who do you listen to? And then there's two key points in success. Only two. I try to distill things down to make it real simple rather than have a list of 10 points and all that stuff. Two things. You can be successful in anything. It's who do you listen to, and then how willing are you to change? So those are two things. So if you pick the person you're going to listen to, and then once they correct you, which they will, if they're truly this great person at what they're trying to teach you, you can't know everything. That's why so then they tell you to make this change, and you said, no, I don't want to do that. I'll do this and this, but not that. I'll do that. No, I don't want to do that. That's how most people that I'm around, they'll just pick and choose what they think, even though they have this person that's done it all. Why don't you just listen and do what this person that's already accomplished it? Whether you want to be a millionaire, whether you want to learn how to be a great musician, whether you want to be a wrestler like Dan Gable, go find that person. And once you find that person and they take you on as a student, let's just say, and I feel like even though he didn't take me on as a personal student, I was in this class that he was there. So for a full week, I was right in the front. And this is a key point too. In sports that require demonstration, they need a partner. Who do you think his partner was? I was just a kid who knew nothing about wrestling.
He grabbed you as his partner?
No, I grabbed him.
Oh, really?
I wasn't going to leave it to chance.
Yeah.
Because I teach a lot of clinics too. And so when I'm walking in, I'm got 100 kids there I'm teaching, I'll pick one user. I'll say, well, who wants to be my drill partner? And everyone's afraid. Everyone will sit there and no one will do anything. And I'll pick somebody.
Yeah.
Well, I knew that was going to happen. So when he was posturing himself ready to say the words,
I'm here.
I was standing right next to him. And I knew nothing about wrestling. Very little. I didn't react right. I poked him in the eye once. It was comical. But one thing I know about success is you can't be embarrassed when you want something. Whether it's an actor who can embarrass themselves in a role because they want the role. Whether it's a wrestler like me who wants a piece of Dan Gable, I will stand up and embarrass myself just to get what he can show me. Yeah. So that made the difference for me, I think. But it had to be him, though.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Coach Kemp is saying about the chance as well. It's not an apple when it ripes, it falls down. You have to make it happen. And if you accept the fact, say, the wrestling or technique or anything else is an art, then it requires the knowledge. The knowledge is a practice of. Then it requires time. So we have to be charitable to the time. Some pick early, some people but don't. And Coach Kemp is indicating finding the right person. And this is something I think generally we got a problem with this country. We haven't got schools, say, with the educational system. Then people jump around coaches and looking for this magical thing to happen rather than surrendering yourself to someone you think is the right person because it's a relationship. Coach gets to know the body type. I'm one of those guys in my seminars comes up, you don't choose the technique chooses your body type.
Yeah.
That's one of the sides. Then because it's rewarding, the rewarding system of your brain, then you like it because you're getting success out of it. Then confidence itself, you see how he's moving on. Confidence is as a byproduct of your capability of doing it. Then again, is a practice. You know this by drilling, but drilling in the right technique. And you do need the third eye. As a human being, we do see outside. But we don't see inside. But you got the psychological side of it. You got the physical side of it, technical side of it. It gets complex unless you have the right coach, that Coach Kemp is indicating, to choose the right person for your journey. That itself is a relationship. You might not be agreeable to each other. I work with different coaches and I identify how great they are, but I just know I won't be able to work with them. Yeah. If you tell me today, I shared this with Coach Kemp 2 days ago. If Dan Gable comes to me and says, Saeed, I like your ideas and all this stuff you're doing, progressing where wrestling is going in our industry, or we're relating it to other sports, BJJ, Muay Thai, or anything else. If Dan Gable said to me, if I want to work with you, I don't think I'm agreeable with his way of his methods, but I do know he's one of the greatest ever lived.
Yeah,
right. He's a living legend. I'm just agreeable to Coach Kemp, and vice versa, the relationship. And when it comes to the student and the coach, for me, I don't think it's a theory. Actually, I think it's just a fact. Is that throughout the years, you see guys are working with each other over 15 years, then suddenly he just wins. He's one of those guys that like peaks late. And you get someone like Coach Kemp, he peaked very early. It was just instant, you know. Then it's the composition of the person that allows him to be there.
Yeah.
You know, do you see what I mean? I'm very relational person.
You know what? Talking about that has made me think of something, and it's to do with some of the differences. You know, I'm always trying to relate stuff because I took back to jiu-jitsu because it's all I know.
And we love that. This is something we're doing.
But in terms of the infrastructure, not the infrastructure, but the wrestling in America, where, you know, and compared to say jiu-jitsu, probably in America as well, but especially in the UK, it's very, very different in terms of, because I'm thinking about the relationships.
Yes.
Because when you're talking about how important, I 100% agree with you. I'm sure both of you agree as coaches, how important the relationship is. And obviously your relationship with Dan Gable was a huge part of how you know, the rest of your life went. And there's people who will talk about, when they're talking about loyalty to clubs and loyalty to instructors and stuff like that, especially within jiu-jitsu, there's kind of a split of opinion between you should be loyal to a club.
I love that question, by the way.
And then other people will say, I'm a customer, I pay my money. If I want to go and train somewhere else, I'll go train someone else. I don't owe anyone anything. And you know, it's a really, and it's true to a degree. You are paying for a service, but you're not paying for a coffee in Starbucks. You're paying for, there's a lot of that investment
lineage,
of, you know, you are paying for a relationship. But then it made me think, you know, how is that different to the wrestling? And I think the difference between having the majority of wrestlers in America are kids, right? Once you get out of college, unless you're going into competing in the Olympics and stuff like that, most people stop wrestling after college, right? So the vast majority of people who are wrestling they don't have jobs, and wrestling is potentially going to be a big part of their life, if not the biggest part of their life. So they don't have that customer mentality that adults with jobs, with families who are doing it as a hobby have in jiu-jitsu. And I think it's just that I think when people come with the mentality of they're a customer, I can train where I want, I don't have loyalty to anyone, they're not getting that relationship that you're talking about that's so important.
So are you indicating on the topic, the loyalty side of it? What do we think on that?
Yeah, you know, I don't even know if it's a question. It's just you just made me think about it.
Do you want to say? I got something to say about this. I see the difference between loyalty and obedience.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perhaps is for my academic sort of reading and towards my subjects and stuff from Eric Fromm. There's a difference between obedience and loyalty. Okay, which has loyalty in terms of responsibility. Yeah. Okay, I'm responsible to my coach. I'm responsible to being a human being, humanitarian sort of values. And one of the things that's perhaps to do with Iranian wrestling, because my dad was an Iranian wrestler, and his coach, funny enough, was a similar sort of thing. Coach Kemp is that, you know, but they believed in responsibility. So there's no sense of belonging to someone. So it's not a duty. Obedience means duty, is an order. I'm not so much of a believer of that, but I am responsible just sitting down here as my colleague, as the coach, with working together, and towards yourself, you know, as a human being. I've got a certain amount of responsibility there. Then again, if I've gone there with wholeheartedly, I've committed myself to wrestling, then I'll accept what is in that gym. So if it's disagreeable to my system of beliefs, then I will choose by myself without, you know, belonging to someone. I'll choose to go somewhere. Maybe he's got those values I believe in. Where I believe certain systems, without getting deeply sociological argument on this podcast, I think the background of it, if you see it, it is based on obedience. So that's maybe a different subject, but you know, my psychology itself, I don't believe in pure psychology because I got sociological background. So I see it that way. So tribalism will kick in, you know. What is obedience? What is responsibility?
Yeah, you know, there's definitely a difference between loyalty and obedience. And I guess maybe a lot of coaches they want
Can I take this a little bit further?
Yeah, go on.
So if you look at the masochist and a sadist, okay, and the masochist and the sadist cannot live without each other. Okay, so they have to surrender themselves to each other. So the obedience is there, and the other one doesn't like the responsibility, gives himself to the other person. So if I make myself a demigod as a coach, I become, the masochist there. And the sadist will surrender himself to me as a student. Once he goes, I will get angry because there's ownership there. But the depth for me is empty because I feel like I have to own someone, But in terms of sharing my knowledge, a personal view, knowledge doesn't belong to anyone. I'm a second-hand information. Well, I saw one of your books are coming in. Second-hand information is the word of Krishnamurti. Well, I saw one of your books and I've read Krishnamurti, and that's one of his arguments there, So Coach Kemp, his information is coming, say, for example, one of his coaches is from Dan Gable. And mine is coming from my dad. I've had different coaches, I had the Russian system, American system, as well as Iranian system, but fundamentally Iranian system. That comes from Ghulam Reza Takhti of Iran. And this is a huge figure. He probably is the biggest figure of Iran, symbolic of a man of Iran is Ghulam Reza Takhti. Those system of beliefs part of my wrestling has even been passed on to me, what I do believe in, then that's agreeable to me. Then I surrender myself towards that way. But I'm a believer of humanitarian values. I say yes to humanitarian value. I believe in disobedience in the terms of capacity to say no. Capacity to say no to authority that's against my humanitarian values. So if you try to control me within the BJJ, within the wrestling, I will say no to you. Or maybe I keep the silences on one point, I'll bring it up. Because sometimes we're in a bad position. If we say no, it's scary for people, isn't it, And if you feel an empty inside, psychologically, whatever it is, you can channel it towards any kind of sport. So we do know sports, but a sense of belonging is there. You belong to a family. So if you never had it as a sort of childhood, you come into a gym, they'll take you on. It does feel good.
Yeah.
That's overcoming aloneness. Then there's a unionship there. But what happens there, if there's a demigod there, it can be abused in that situation. So that's for me, that's exploitive.
Yeah.
That's when it's dangerous. But for both sides. And this is something, is an argument of obviously freedom then.
Yeah. Well, I think, there is obviously a difference between obedience and loyalty. And I think that sometimes those lines are blurred and a coach he wants something like that, right? He wants some relationship in that way with a student, but they don't really know the difference between loyalty and obedience, so they may go towards
I think some of the coaches are unaware of it too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The coaches are unaware.
I don't think
so they don't know what they want.
Case
really.
Of blaming and shaming. We just not been educated sometimes. Non-violence communication. Dr. Rosenberg. Even the listening when we say well done without a description is a little bit like the Facebook likes, So Facebook likes drops, my self-esteem drops down. When it goes up, I'm feeling wonderful about myself. So the dopamine system is working. So it becomes addictive without giving a description. But you as my student, you done this technique. I give a description why it made me feel good by your act. Then there's a difference between well done, because well done is authority. Because I've decided that was good. Then I might decide that is not good. Then your self-esteem can be affected as a coach. But we just not been educated,
So if you can't say well done, what do you say?
That technique was great because you kept your head up. I think keeping that head up.
You got to give them a reason why.
Give them a reason why. Description. And is not based on authority. Is based on language of life. I think is about the feeling. Feeling is connected to your needs. Once your need is provided, my needs are provided. We got no differences there. We're both happy. When that gets violated, we fall out with each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. We just went off the track there, but
that's what it's for. That's why we just sit down, we chat, we can go off whatever track we want. So, what were we talking about beforehand?
I think it was the success of Coach Kemp with Dan Gable.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing, because whilst you're talking, there's so much information that I'm thinking of 1,000 things at the same time. One of the things that you said, there were two things that differentiated you from everyone else at that camp, which is the reason why you were then state champion or state champion the next year.
Yeah.
So, and that was one, you kind of committed to everything he said, focused on the details. But the second one was you worked as hard as he did. You followed his example, and no one else was willing to do that. I want to know why. Because that's why did you work that hard? Because that's a huge sacrifice to do, and it's so hard for so many. The reason why champions are champions because they have a different work ethic to the people who are second place, third place, or aren't bothering to even show up to the tournament or didn't even qualify for the tournament. What was it that made you want to go, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice everything to train as hard as Dan Gable does?
That's a great question, and I can't answer it now at 61 years of life. Back then, I would not have been able to answer it.
Yeah.
I was I was adopted. I was born Darnell Freeman, and found my biological family when I was my 30s or something like that. So anyway, it's good to know where you came from, sort of, and all that. I was adopted by a great family, but I think those first 5 years of life, we now know psychologically through all the science that goes into children when they're born and all the nurturing they get.
Yeah.
At 5, when you're in the 2 foster homes, more institutionalized, you're not getting the same type of nurturing. So I think my earliest memories I can remember just being alone a lot. I don't remember being abused or anything, but I just remember being alone. And that's a form of abuse, really, for a child.
Absolutely.
I know I couldn't have been held, really, because I know I've had my own kids, and I know how a loving mother would hold their babies almost, for like 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
But in an institutionalized setting, that's just not possible. And not, no fault of the institution. They just can't. They've got all these babies. And I was given up at birth, so I was an infant. And I was in 2 foster homes, so there's a change there that occurred. Any type of familiarity I was getting in the first place was broken, and then I was in this second foster home as a young child. And now only as an adult, I look back, I was very shy, very quiet, didn't talk very much. And those are all characteristics of someone who's maybe been abused, or just been neglected. So I'm only saying that now because I was trying to figure out why I worked so hard at wrestling. You're right. It's hard to figure that out. Why I could make that switch so quickly in just in like a few months to decide I wanted to beat everybody.
Did at the time, did you have a drive that you didn't understand why you had it? You just, for some reason, you wanted to work hard, you wanted to succeed.
Yeah, and I think by telling that story, I think it was because I felt alone and insignificant, and I wanted to be significant. I wanted to prove my worthiness of being alive, I think, because I was always, I always felt like I didn't belong anywhere. And my parents told me I was adopted. So right away, to a child, what does that mean when you tell a child that your biological parents gave you up and we adopted you? That in and of itself makes you feel like you don't really belong anywhere. And I always felt that I was struggling to find my place in this world. So, not to get into the whole in-depth of my feelings, but I think that gives you an example of how everyone's drive for success is different. Everyone, and most successful people that I talk to in anything, it comes from some struggle that they had. Whether it's a millionaire who grew up poor, they just decided that they never want to be poor again. They never want to be struggling. They never want to be counting, paycheck to paycheck. I talk to people all the time about that. And for me, I think I just wanted to be, I just wanted to be good at something. I just wanted to be noticed. So years and years and years, from birth till 14, that's all, it doesn't seem like a lot of years, but that's a lot of years of feeling insignificant.
Yeah.
But you combine that with the genetics that I had. I met my biological dad, and he was a stud, man.
Really?
I don't know if that's the term they use here in the UK.
Yes.
But I met him when I was like 38. He looked like Jim Brown, remember Jim Brown, the football player from the USA? Just a big, thick,
actor, right?
well, he was an actor, but he was a football player first.
Yes.
He was built like I don't know,
Jim Brown.
built like, I don't know, just strong, just
Yeah.
big arms.
He was in that movie, the OGs, Original Gangsters.
Yeah.
You ever seen that?
No.
He's a
Well,
cool dude.
Dirty Dozen was his first movie.
Yes.
That with Steve McQueen and all that. That's when he became a superstar, because they had all these rugged men in Dirty Dozen, and there's Jim Brown. Everyone knew who Jim Brown was.
Yeah.
It'd be like taking, I don't follow football that much anymore, but taking the biggest, strongest running back, and everyone knows who he is because he's rugged.
Does Adam get his good looks as the second good looks passed on from your father?
Well, he gets I don't know about the good looks. He's way better looking than me. But I think he gets some of his athleticism. And when we say athleticism, that's a word that's used too much, because I think some people hear the word athleticism and they think that person didn't have to work very hard.
Yeah.
They think, oh, he could just do it because he was just an athlete. Well, I thank God I was blessed with that. But anyway, I think you combine just this feeling of always wanting to be noticed.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to be noticed is to be good at something. Like, I remember in class not wanting to say anything, even if I knew the answer. I just felt, and then my parents had raised me that great family, and I saw my dad's work ethic. I mean, it was just a combination of a lot of different things. But when I got into wrestling, I realized physically I was pretty dominant. And that was something I never would have understood unless I became a wrestler. Because wrestling is mostly physical. It's mostly physical. And I was pretty good at the physical part of it. I just didn't know the moves. I didn't know how to wrestle. And I didn't know I was mentally tough until I came back from that camp with Dan Gable. I realized how mentally tough I actually was, because he put us through some drills. Because I was trying to impress Dan Gable, I was trying to show myself worthy.
Yeah.
I wanted his, head nod that, like, wow, that kid's tough. I wanted that. I wanted to feel like that attaboy, or that kind of a thing. The positive affirmations. And I remember Dan Gable's coach, Harold Nichols, I was asking him how to do something. That's another thing. I wasn't afraid to ask for help. And I was having trouble getting this one move, and I could tell he was getting frustrated with me that I couldn't learn it so quickly. And I remember once I said to him, well, I'm trying. He said, well, it's not good enough. And I remember how hurt I was when he said that. I thought,
Coach Kemp, do you want to because we talked about it yesterday when we were shopping, you said about trying. You shared that with me yesterday, didn't you? About something I told Coach Kemp.
Well, trying could be an excuse for failing.
Sure.
And so Coach Esmaeli said, if you're trying, you're lying. And I heard that, and I thought, man, that's it. That's it exactly. When people just immediately just say, I'm trying.
Relating to, what we said earlier, surrendering yourself, then you're not trying.
Yeah.
Then failure,
you're lying to yourself.
You're doing it.
You don't really want success. You just think you want success.
Are you coming out tonight? I'll try my best. There's kind of a little bit of indication I probably will not,
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Then try and line is not my words. I gotta say, this is from one of the biggest scholars of Iran.
Yeah.
He lives in LA, Dr. Holakwi, and I'm a big follower of his work. And I shared it with Coach Kemp. Then when he said about this experience, you're not trying enough. What did the coach say to you?
Well, he says, it's not good enough. You're still failing. You're not doing the move correctly.
Yeah.
And I was just so wanting to please this coach. I'm trying. All I could think of saying is, I'm trying. Just give me a chance. I'm trying. And he just, like it was almost like a slap in the face. It's not good enough. So that could take you two directions. You could quit, or you could try harder. I tried harder for some reason. And then that same coach, at the end of the camp, complimented me, and he said, and he asked me, it was kind of a compliment, and then another slap in the face. He said, "How did you do this year in the state tournament?" Because the camp was after your high school season. He just assumed I was a fairly good wrestler by how I was progressing in the camp and on my work ethic. And he said, "Well, how did you do?" And I said, "Well, I didn't do very well." "Well, did you place in the state? Did you win the state?" "No, I didn't do any of those things." He looked at me and he just walked away from me. Because I hadn't accomplished anything, he wasn't interested in talking to me.
But he assumed that you had based on how you were training.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there again, I went away from that camp, like frustrated, like, okay, I got to figure out a way to earn the right to exist.
Yeah, well, that's, kind of going back to what you
Sense of
said
belonging.
just prior to that, you know, that you weren't good at anything and you wanted to be good at something, and he went, oh, okay, well, if you haven't placed at state, you're not worth talking to.
Yeah.
That's that must have, and yeah, you can tell a lot about a person from how they react to that sort of adversity, because that is like a real powerful psychological adversity. When you're putting
huge.
a lot of pressure is put onto you, are you going to go, shit, you know what, you're right, I'm nothing?
This is why we talk about the resilience side of it. I shared with you. I mean, this is the first time we're sharing it with anyone. Resilience. We mixed the two words together, resilience and wrestling. But wrestling continuously, there's a lot of defeats in wrestling, because it's not very rewarding
Lots
in
of
sports.
matches,
Let me
lots of
share
matches,
something with you. I'll say it in my seminars. Iran under 9s, 2.5 million wrestlers. Under 9s, 8 of them make the team.
Jeez.
Right? College wrestlers, to the statistics I've got, is quite old. It'll have to be updated. 4.5 million college wrestlers. Yeah? There's 8 champions. How many weight different categories in US
10.
wrestling? 10. So 10 of them become the champions of the,
Wow.
So, and we don't have the belt system.
Yeah.
We don't have individual sort of smaller competition that we can call ourselves European champions. There's just one. There's one Olympics. And every one of us, when we surrendered ourselves to wrestling, we got the Olympic dream gold medal. Every one of us. So we train in the same way. So either way you become a champion, don't become a champion, you're going to have to go through this continuous pressure, which our resilience side of it, resilience, we're talking about performing under pressure, elegance under pressure, which Coach Kemp managed to find that.
Yeah.
As his success comes there. But I see his meaning, why he's doing it, the will to meaning. It came from he didn't belong. He felt alone. So that channeled it that way for him to get success. Then he kept driving him more forward and forward. And there, I had the same thing coming from Iran. Going to the school, didn't speak English. Interesting, when I was in Blackburn, that's one of my, before I went to Bristol, I went to school with the Indian community, Pakistani community, there was English community. Then I was an ugly duckling. As soon as I go in, they pushed me out.
Yeah.
I was brown. I thought I just could fit in the Pakistani. I can't. Don't forget, just language itself is a disconnection.
Absolutely.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Coach Kemp, the disconnection you said about the parent side of it, there's nowhere to belong to. Then that drives you going forward. And we know most biggest champions like Coach Kemp, they had some sort of adversity there. I've become established coach now, but I see as a byproduct of I couldn't become a super champ in terms of wrestling. And I mean, Coach Kemp saw me moving with Adam. That's when he decided, I want you to Coach Kemp, just explain that. But I couldn't become a super champion because the garden wasn't here for me. I disconnected. So where I was going forward with trying to make myself a wrestler, researching, then I became established coach rather than that. That was a byproduct of that. Without me realizing, one day I was training myself to become a coach. But I was going forward with it. That resilient side of it. No, breaking down, coming there. And maybe you could share that side of the Adam. What happened when you watched this? Because the day we were filming, it was a difference between the seminar where I was ill, then you saw us.
Well, coming here and being a part of the workshop is the first time I got a chance to see Saeed teach and instruct as a coach, and I was really impressed. And it was probably an opportunity for him to see me live too. And what I wanted for my son is, and this is a kind of relationship that sons have with fathers primarily, I knew that my son needed to have a good coach. He needed to have someone else coach him, because sometimes when I try to coach him, the father-son dynamic gets in the way, and it's
very. I know dozens and dozens of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts who send their kids to another academy to train.
Yeah.
Dozens of them.
And
that clash kicks in sometimes, isn't it?
It's just
dynamic is difficult.
It's hard to be dad and coach at the same time. Very difficult. Very difficult.
Even though if you do know what you're talking about.
Oh, even if you're the best, even if you're the best coach in the world, because they don't want to listen to you, right?
But I saw how Saeed was. Well, first of all, I saw his technique was amazing. So I love that about him. So I thought, wow, I want my son to learn from someone who can really teach him not only the technique, but the micro moves, which he and I agree on already. So I think, well, I'd share with this with Saeed already, so I wanted him to work with Adam, and he did. There were times in the clinic we got to work with him just one-on-one, and then he got another colleague of his,
John Saidi,
So
known
the-
as Josh Saidi now.
So the three of them, Iranian-based training is the best training.
Really?
Soviet training is good, but the best Iranians beat the best
Really?
Russians. There's just not enough of them
Yeah.
to win a team title. But when I've seen some of the great Iranians, man, they were amazing. I've seen some anyway. So with that fun foundation of background from Coach Esmaeli, and I saw what he was teaching Adam, it just took Adam's technique to a whole new level. Way over above what I was teaching because it was only so much getting in, and I tried to focus on what I thought I could best teach my son in a short amount of time because my son started wrestling late too. Now that he's graduated from high school, he had some success in high school. He took fifth in the Illinois high school state championships, which is a really very, very impressive accomplishment considering he started late as well, like in ninth grade. So by his third year, he was right near the top. He lost to a wrestler by only a point that made it to the finals.
Wow.
So Adam could have been in the finals. And he trains in the same club as the kid that won it. And he knows, he tells me, he knows. I'll have him say it on the air. How do you think you'd have done against
you go.
Ortiz?
I think I would have beat him, to be honest.
Yeah.
But,
And
Well, styles make matches, right?
yeah.
But that's the state. If he would have won he lost by 1 point. If he'd have got past that one match, he would have been in the finals with Ortiz, and he's already feels like he could have beaten him because Ortiz and him train in the same room. So he's watching him, and occasionally they'll goes together. So you start to realize, hey, I'm as good as this guy, even though this guy is coached by one of the great coaches in the USA. But anyway, when I saw that, I thought, I keep throwing age in my son, and Coach Saeed tells me, quit talking about your age. But I am 61. My son needs a younger coach to take him on that could take him on and be with him for a long time.
Sure.
And Coach Saeed had mentioned, maybe we can have Adam go to Iran. And I'm thinking, wow. In addition to the wrestling, what a cultural experience that would be to get to go over to a country like Iran, chaperoned by Coach Saeed Esmaeli and his colleagues and his connections he has in Iran. He come back from there after a week or two, a world champion level athlete. Coach Saeed said that there's a world champion inside your son. That's the first thing he said to me after he trained with him a little bit, and that shocked me a little bit. He said, Coach Kemp, there's a world champion inside your son. And I said, well, I want you to coach that part of him. I want you to make him a world champion. I want you to teach him the things that he needs to be a world champion. And a lot of it is the work ethic.
Yeah.
Coach Saeed was telling about how the training that they used to do was pretty intense.
But a few things about that. Why was it that you got Adam into wrestling so late, considering that you kind of had your background?
A lot of it's personal.
Yeah.
I went through a divorce. That was probably the main reason.
Did you want him to wrestle?
Oh, yeah.
Is that something from
yeah.
From a young age? You're like,
one of my older son wrestled too, but
yeah.
as it turned out, I really didn't spend much time with my older son. It was
Sure.
right during the 5-year period of the worst part of our breakup. So Adam was young then. My older son is 7 years older than Adam. So Adam was like 5, maybe it was 6, but 6 and 7. So Adam was 5 when all of it was going on. And so 11 and 12 were my other children. So 12 years old on, I wasn't with my older son. And so, but living in different states, California and Minnesota. So, and I wanted him to wrestle, but the mom didn't want him to wrestle. So Adam came to live with me when he was 10. It was a blessing. God blessed me in that way.
Yeah.
So he came when he was 10. So I started immediately figuring out how I could get him to wrestle. So.
I think for me, it's been a big blessing itself. For me and Adam formed a relationship. We enjoy each other's company. I mean, yesterday we continuously were laughing. I still don't know why I was laughing at. Coach Kemp was a bit like, why you guys keep laughing? But just in a wrestling room, we got the ability to switch on and switch off.
Yeah.
But we were filming, Coach Kemp and I. Then I had a little workout with Adam there, but before that, Adam showed me a clip have one of his matches, and that's when I thought, I looked at the movement. I just saw one single leg attack. That's good enough for me. You know, I said, Coach Kemp, there's a world champion that sat there, but he needs tuning, the work ethic's there. He needs a little bit of time, but he's shown already. I mean, his scholarship. Do you want to talk a little bit about my experience and your scholarship? And
I want to ask Adam some questions anyway afterwards. So you come in a little bit.
Come forward.
All right. I finished 5th in state, and it's actually like that was mainly because of my dad. Actually, because like 3 weeks before state, I was kind of like not as confident as I like would have wanted to be, but my dad was telling me like if you want to like place or win it, you have to do these things. And at first I like didn't want to do those things, and he knew it. But he started training me at my school. He started coming after my practice to train me, and then eventually I started like learning so much I was calling him after practice to.
You start thinking, actually, I think that this. You might be right.
Yeah.
We're talking about the belief, like the surrender into the coach. I think there's just a little bit more resistance to surrender yourself to your dad. You know,
belief itself.
Yeah.
There's a process there. You know, there's a process there for Adam to surrender himself.
Yeah.
I actually believe in my dad's work now.
Yeah.
You know, or someone else was like, oh my God, Coach Camp's gonna coach me.
Yeah, totally.
Do you see the process?
Yeah.
It takes time. Anyway, back to Adam.
Yeah, it was crazy because like looking back on it, I should have. Well, all the success I had was always because he would teach me. He would teach me some stuff, and I would go out there and I would take people down with this like single leg and stuff, and then I'd sometimes like lose like close matches, and I think like, dang, I just like let my dad down, and he told me to do this and this, and I did it, and I still lost. But it's because I was always like half doing it, kind of. I felt like, and I don't. But I kind of fully committed the last 3 weeks before state, and it turned out for me. So,
you know, a few things that I wanted to ask you is one. Obviously, we've heard about what your dad's motivation was to wrestle. What's your motivation to wrestle?
I think it's kind of weird. I feel similar to what he said a little bit, just in terms of I want to do something great. Like
I think that everyone has that in them. I don't think that you need to have gone through what you had gone through personally in your life to have the desire to have a purpose. You know, I think that that's natural. I
kind of want to prove it to myself that I could do it, and I want to go through like that mental change of like doing things you don't want to do, kind of, because
getting comfortable in the uncomfortable,
and because like before state, I like that feeling of like having a grind. Like I was so tired after like going through my practice and going through another practice with him, and that feeling, it kind of changed my mindset a little bit. And I kind of like that, so I just want to prove it to myself.
Sure. And do you feel any pressure from having a? Because there must be, and it's kind of something that we obviously in jiu-jitsu is such a big thing because you have the Gracie family, and you feel that every, you know, you had the Gracies, the first generation, they all had kids, they must have felt a lot of pressure. They managed to succeed. Then they had kids, and it must be more. You know, your dad's one of the greatest American wrestlers of all time. Does that put a lot of pressure on your shoulders?
Yeah, it was because, well. Like throughout my I started getting like more serious like around like sophomore year, but like junior year I kind of said like, okay, like I'm gonna like make it to state at least, like and then but there was always this one kid who'd always beat me, and he placed in state, and he was like ranked nationally, and he was like the biggest D1 prospect, and he would always beat me like pretty bad, and then like people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, like, you're Lee Kemp's son, right?" And I'd be like, "Oh shit!" Like, and
Tell about what you told me last night about the praying. I said, "God,
oh,
that's pretty cool."
I was like, "Oh God!" Like I just want, before I leave high school, I just want to beat this kid, please.
Yeah,
because like that was like the worst feeling, like having people come up to me and be like, "Oh, you're Lee Kemp's son, right?" And then I think, oh, I got this kid next, and they're gonna like see me. But it turned out that like I had this kid in the blood round. The kid who's always beat me like 4 times. He pinned me once. I had him in the blood round to place and stay in the. My dad came up to me like trying to like give me motivation, and I kind of thought to myself like I kind of like thought like, oh, I don't want to like let him down, so I kind of turned away a little bit.
Let me interject something right there. This is very important. This wrestler, he was favored to probably I think he could have won the state.
Yeah.
Really, but he got upset by 1 point by the wrestler that made it to the finals. So that put him in the wrestlebacks. Adam got beat first round by that same kid that made it to the finals. So the worst thing that could have happened was to have this kid that Adam had this mental block against. He felt he could beat everybody else, except probably 2 kids in the tournament. There was another kid too that he had a mental block against. He bypassed him. We were like, doesn't wrestle, but this kid got beat. It's like, how? Why did he get beat? So I'm thinking to myself, boy, for Adam to even place, there were like 4 former state place winners in the wrestlebacks because it was a really tough weight.
Because that's like a repechage division, right?
Yes, that would be, but like it's straight bracketing. We had an upper bracket, lower bracket. There's 4 state place winners that are in the tournament. So 2 of those,
It's actually 5
or 5. There was 5. So 3 of them are going to be in the wrestlebacks.
Yeah.
Only 2, and the 2 made it to the finals, but there was 3 state place winners in the wrestlebacks, which Adam wasn't one of them. So he's going to have to beat one of those guys to just get into place in the top 8.
Yeah.
And the way it worked out, it had to be Fronte. And he told me out of his own mouth, he's like, Dad, I don't think I could beat Fronte. And I'm like what? I was like, and I just had to walk away because I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, how is he going to beat this guy if he's going to have to beat a guy he just told me he doesn't think he could beat him? Anyway, now I need to set it up by that.
Yeah.
So
Well, then I kind of like went off by myself, and I kind of started thinking about like how my dad would, like what my dad would do.
You tried to channel him.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because kind of like a archetype.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought like, I tried to think about how he felt like wrestling, like Dan Gable's first time and like stuff like that. So I just thought like this is my last year. Like, I mean, I'm gonna beat this kid. And I started saying that, and like when I walked on the mat, like when I watched the video of myself, my like posture is different. And, like my like confidence was different in how I wrestled. And I beat him, but it was a hard match. So I shot this double and I like picked him all the way up in the air. And like slammed him back down the mat, but he had a whizzer, so he like whizzered out of it. And I was like, and usually like that would have like kind of like affect me mentally. Like I would just like lift this kid up in the air and slam him back down the mat, and I just didn't even take him down. Mm-hmm. And but I took him down again, and that was the takedown to win it. I beat him 3-2.
And this is some of the stuff. Don't need to turn this around.
Yeah.
This is some of the stuff we want to work, identifying whether this is psychological thing we need to look at, or there's the actual technique side he hasn't covered yet. Sometimes he's, Adam, you should have done that, but maybe we haven't covered that as coaches. He hasn't practiced it afterwards. How to control the guy when he's bringing it down and chain it. What is chain wrestling? What is flow wrestling? These terms come up, but we don't really break it down for our students. And we worked on, even last night, before we sleep, we were looking at some sprawl positions, then Adam, I don't know, you say those little experiences we had together, because I want to identify why I think there's a world champion with Adam, I don't want to use the term just for the sake of it. I genuinely believe in it. Otherwise, I'm not going to commit myself to Adam because first of all, I'm going to let him down. Secondly, I'm going to give him false hope. But I genuinely believe is there, and one of the they've talked about this double picking up, bringing it down. Maybe you can relate it to this.
It's weird actually, because a lot of like my high school coaches told me that too, and like even
did they believe that you could be a world champion?
Yeah.
State champion.
State champion.
Yeah.
Well, no, like my high school coach told me like he thinks I'll be like the best in the nation, and then I'll go on to be a world champion. And even my club coach, who isn't even my high school coach, but he is a really good coach, by the way. But he's told a guy who already is a world champion that he's gonna have to beat kids like me to be another world champion. So that is really good confidence boosters, and after I did beat that kid that had always beat me, I had next to be fifth or sixth. I had to beat the state runner-up from last year, and I beat him
Wow.
I beat him by like 7 points or something.
Yeah.
So it's just
So that was easier.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have the mental block.
No.
Because one of my questions was going to be, and actually you answered it completely when you were just kind of talking about it, but was in relation to the having to live up to the name, or having your dad as who he is. That is either going to break you because of the pressure, or boost your confidence because of you can take it either way. You've got like this big burden, either it will crumble you, or you know what, that's actually going to make me stronger. And actually you described it did both. In some cases it actually was a bit of a hindrance. You felt, man, I've got a lot to live up to, and people are coming and they're saying, oh, you're Lee Kemp's son, and that you expect stuff, and actually that's stuff. But then actually when you really consciously tried to harness it, try and turn, and it's such a good lesson that you can take something that feels like it should be a detriment, and you can turn that around, and you can actually use that to your benefit. You took that pressure that was actually starting to crumble you, and you turned it around and used that to, like you said, come out as a completely different person. So it's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, this journey has been like just one that I'm glad I went this way, because I got to see firsthand how he thinks and why he was such a champion. Because there was times where I'd have to go to the gym and do these crazy workouts, these just circuits where you don't stop, or you have 10-second breaks, and then he would always said, this is what you have to do to be a champion. This is what I did, and I always think to myself no wonder you were a champion. You worked hard. You worked harder than anyone would want to work. You worked above and beyond that. So, and then he took me back to Chardon, Ohio, and showed me the roads he would run.
Wow.
He'd run up these steep hills, and
there's a fetish with wrestling.
Crazy.
They love some hills.
Yeah, we were in Cabot Tower in Bristol. I don't know if you know it. Because Coach Kemp started running, and I said, "Oh, there's another crazy wrestler there. He's just a fetish. We got did hard work." And then Coach Kemp said, "We got no choice. It's just the way it is with the wrestling."
Yeah.
I share something here. We with the brain goes in a fight, or flight, or freeze. In 3 stages it goes there. With our resilience, when we teach seminar tonight, one of them is about fight, flight, or freeze, and friendship with insanity. What you call it, comfortability with uncomfortable. Is that what you said?
Get comfortable and
uncomfortable. I heard you say that earlier. It's just familiarity with the problems. Preparation for the familiarity with the problems. Because it can be anything. Coming from Bristol to London, what things can go wrong? One of them is petrol. One of them is being tired. Just go to sleep, go to bed. You traveling tomorrow? All those little things, and that's great. You're showing them actual hills.
Yeah, it was a situation going back to my hometown, because Chicago's only 6 hours from Cleveland, so we had the opportunity to go there for the national tournament, the NC2A tournament for D1. That was just 2 weekends ago now.
Yeah.
So I do some work for ESPN, and so I get to take my son with me, so he gets to watch all the his mentors, I would say, people that in just 1 year he's going to be in there battling with all of them. There's true freshmen like Spencer Lee and Mark Hall last year. Adam will be a true freshman next year. So we were so close to my hometown. I called my high school coach. He started it all, and I wanted to see him just for that respect that I have for him, and I wanted to show him that I do. Think about him, and I wanted to show him that I think about him by just showing up, or call him, and we went to visit, rather than sometimes people say that they were thinking about you but they don't call, or they say whatever. So I said I have to physically go see him. That's important, and I want my son to see that. So it worked out really well. The thing that was touching, though, when I was in high school, I gave him this drawing. My cousin's an artist. It was a pretty large, I don't know, probably as large as that poster drawing. He did of me and my high school coach. It was in the paper.
Wow.
After I won my first state title, and it was in the paper. My cousin kept it, and he just presented it to me as a gift one day, shortly after the state tournament. And I just said, I can't keep this. I didn't earn this. My coach got me here, so I gave it to him. This was back in 1973.
Wow.
It's 2018, and we went to his house unannounced. Literally, I called him hour before I got there, and just to see if he was home. And he said he was. I said, I'd like to stop by. I'm going to be commentating in about a few hours. I have time to come see you. I want to bring my son. We go to his house, into his living room. There was that picture.
No way.
Center, right? And it's like, wow, all those years. That's how much it meant to him. And it was like, it meant that to me. And that's why. I mean, there's so many factors that gave me the strength and the idea that I could win. It was my high school coach was part of it. The relationship, because he took me to that camp. I didn't get to that camp by myself when I was in high school. I didn't know anything about camps. I just started wrestling. I knew nothing about camps. And he identified this camp. He as a coach wanted to learn from there was other great coaches there. So he went there to learn. But he took 2 other Chardon wrestlers who wanted to go. He offered it to the whole team. It's just me and another wrestler. And so we got in his car and we drove there. So it started me on this path of wanting to become the best. And my coach believed in me too. That's another thing. A coach can make or break you. When my sophomore year, that year I had a 500 season. I remember once he told me that he thought I could win. And it surprised me. Like, why do you think I can win? Because I'm not winning right now. Why do you think? I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, why does he think that? And so I just kept trying. So if that coach,
if he didn't say that,
I may have quit.
It makes you kind of ponder how many thousands of potential world champions
that is
just never had their coach say, "I reckon you could do it."
Yes,
and they quit.
Yeah,
I'm going to say his name just in case it gets back to him. It's Richard Deppenbrock. That's my high school coach.
Awesome.
I think he was pivotal, and my father too. Coaches Saeed talked about his dad. My dad was the first real example to me of what hard work was. Just a hardworking man who I saw him live his dream. I mean, we lived in Cleveland, in the inner city. Well, not in the inner city, but on the outskirts of Cleveland. Still the city, though. And as a black man from the South, and I'm sure there's some similarities of history, but in America, the civil rights movement was really difficult. My parents went through all that. So we were living in Cleveland, but my dad broke the mold. He wanted to move to Chardon, an all-white community. It didn't matter if it was an all-white community. He wanted the farm that was there.
Yeah.
It didn't care if it could have been an all-Asian community or an all-black community, whatever. He wanted the lifestyle. So we broke through that. So in one summer, I went from all-black community to an all-white one, to where I was one of 2 black kids in the whole junior high school. And I saw my dad live his dream, and that farm was just something extra. He was a factory worker and just wanted this farm. We had animals. We had cows and pigs and chickens, and I saw how happy he was just living his dream. To a lot of immigrants, land means, security and success.
Yeah.
And we had 25 acres of land, which was a lot of land.
Yeah.
And I saw how proud he was, my mom and him, of that. And that gave me
byproduct of his own hand as well as his baby,
And that helped me believe that I could achieve things that I want. And maybe I just thought of that just now.
Yeah.
I watched the example of him go after things that he wanted, and we got this farm. And he manicured it to where it was like a golf green, and our lawn was beautiful. We had flower gardens, just stuff from his own hand. It wasn't money. It wasn't that we had money. He just had the work ethic to create this beautiful place that was not a beautiful place when we got there.
Yeah.
He was very handy, and we did the carpentry work.
Sounds like wrestling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
The work ethic of a farmer, and the uncertainty of a garden.
Yeah.
Carpenter knows exactly how it's going to be, where a farmer or gardener does things, you have to leave it alone for you to come, the success at the end of it. But the work ethic in wrestling has to be there, isn't it?
Oh, it was the excellence, too, because we had vegetable gardens and flower gardens, and people would drive down our road, stop, pull the car on the side of the road, just observe how beautiful our property was. Wow. I mean, that's, like I remember once everybody knew my dad, small town, so the sheriff, the sheriff of this small white town, Chardon, this white sheriff, he'd stop and come knock on the door and just want to have coffee with my dad.
Wow.
That's just how, and my dad would go out in the garden, give him a bushel of whatever, tomatoes or something.
Sounds like the Waltons. I don't know if you know the Waltons.
And so I'm watching all this.
Do you want to, Adam?
I forgot. Like when he was showing you that painting, I was talking to his wife, and she said that like the first time she ever met you, they were picking you up to go to like a wrestling tournament or something, and she said like she was surprised because like you got in the car and like you were all stiff and like you had the and like she said like he had this face on, this like really like focused, like stern face, and then she said that she like cracked the window, and that your coach was like, no, like roll it back up, and then like she like rolled it back up, and like the whole entire time she was just like really like a little nervous because you were just so like focused and like stern, and then she said that that you won, and then like they picked you back up and you were like all like happy again. And I was like, and she told me that, I was like kind of got like an idea of like what you were like, kind of, because it's kind of cool though, because like you got so like in the zone before you wrestled. Like that's crazy.
Dan Gable was like that too. He allowed his athletes to be who they were, and he could tell, because I can remember once I was on the world team, I had already had all this success, and this one other coach, a high-level coach, came by and wanted to, and Dan stepped, said, just leave Lee alone. That's how he warms up. Because this coach wanted me to warm up a little differently. He didn't think I was, in his mind, preparing the way that he had thought an athlete should prepare. Dan had been with me for a while. He said, that's just how Lee warms up. Just leave him alone.
You got to allow the individual to be individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what Adam just pointed out, I mean, I was very different. I was different than anyone around me. And I just thought of something else sitting right here. I was okay with being different because since my earliest existence, I was different.
Yeah.
I was alone and I wasn't like anyone else. So I got very comfortable with being different than everybody else. So whatever came into my head as to what I should do, I was comfortable with that. It didn't matter if no one else was doing it. There's a lot of peer pressure today of young people. If they don't see other people doing
Can
stuff.
I add something to that? I think when we got the structural sort of classes, it's really good to get the foundations out there, and that's, I call that a painter. I'm painting what I see the world as to you as a coach. But I think it reaches stage for athletes, what I call the ophthalmologist, as eye specialist, widen up the view. That's when you allow the athlete to become himself, to actualize himself. We're saying it's an art, it's not there, it's a byproduct, it's a process he have to carry. We're saying Dan Gable allows his students to be themselves as we are fingerprints. A lot of times I see in great coaches even, I mean, what they're teaching is amazing. But what they do, they think that athlete, if I'm coaching Adam, I think Adam has to become like me, how I see the world. I don't allow Adam to flourish as he is, and that's the first time I heard you saying that Gable did that. I think that's the highest level of coach, allows the athlete to become himself, to actualize himself, rather than a painter. I see the world as I am, is my way. This is it. This is what you're going to do. And I think we all got different compositions of who we are psychologically, physically, all different factors, and environmentally, with different coaches has our different effects. As I'm spending time with you, I've learned so much from you today. The relationship is built in here. We said that about the coach and the students, the relationship that you said about is making or breaking itself, through the hard times. We go through it ourselves. It's like a normal relationship, a girl or boy, It gets to a point sometimes, when to hold on and when to let go. Yeah. That itself is an art, when to make that decision is this a right coach for me? Am I developed to go further? And if Adam reaches a point, I think, this is one of the profound things I saw the intelligence of Coach Kemp. He's allowing Adam to work with Saeed. He chose that. He's saying, up to here, I've given to you. Just go over there. And that takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. We don't like to let go. that say about loyalty, then I'm not loyal to his progress, him actualizing to maximize to reach his potential for himself. You know, it's so delicate for us to produce these big champions. There's a different process, I think, to we forming them. This is the foundation. This is the principles of, say, BJJ or wrestling. Then he reaches a point. This kid is actually suitable for competition. This one wants to do it for lifestyle. What is the purpose of you doing it? But he boils down to his little breakdowns, and what you just said about Dan Gable. For me, that's big.
Well, I think something that's underrated for humanity in general is like creativity of the individual. I think everyone has some sort of creative. Some have more than others, but everyone has some sort of creative spirit. And people think that that means you've got to paint or you've got to write songs, but it can be anything. It can be the slight difference in your wrestling style, or everything. And you've got to allow people to have that creativity. You can't just try and create clones of yourself. It's why I don't, and I'm not knocking the people who do, but some academies that make everyone dress the same. In jiu-jitsu, I don't know if you have that in wrestling as well, but in jiu-jitsu, some organizations make everyone wear the same t-shirt, everyone wear the same rash guard, and they can't. And I get it. And some people like that. They like the uniform. I want, that guy's a fucking lunatic. He's going to wear like a bright yellow from his ankles down all to his wrists.
That's what's alive in you. Yeah. It takes your needs there, doesn't it? You know what I mean? And for Saeed might be different. For someone else.
Just everyone do your own thing.
Embrace the difference, but respect the difference. I allow it. But I think we see the differences, but we don't respect each other. Dan might be different to me.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to kind of. Not everyone is going to be the same before a tournament. Some people are going to be asleep 5 minutes before they fight. Some people are going to be blaring Metallica through the headphones and shadow boxing in the corner. And some people are going to be everything in between. I think you've got to let.
Can I say something about what we said about creativity? We say playing has no history. You see Einstein, Richard Feynman, the biggest physicist in the world. He completed Einstein's work. He just didn't want to know about the structure. He said he wanted to play. So when it comes to your signature move, that whatever, say let's take on my idea. Let's say, for you guys being kind to me, say, Saeed, you're right. The move is agreeable to Adam chooses that, but unless Adam play around with that shot, we leave him alone, he'll find that sensitivity of the body to body, which I call wrestling or grappling, is a feel. I got a feel for wrestling. I got a feel for this position. I can't teach him that.
Yeah.
And he's going to go places at some point with one move, one mastery move so deep, no one else can take Adam. Only Adam can take that. I have to allow Adam to go.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? But I got a term there. Sometimes coaches don't like it when I just randomly come out. It's very radical to them, whether it's ego or whatever it is. I say you have to at some point kill your coach.
Yeah.
The birth of a champion is the death of the master. I'm not meaning this physically or to disrespect them. I mean in the mental crutch, such as the steroids. There's a mental crutch there where Dan Gable said Russians are taking it. I'll take him down because he's weak. He was talking about the psychological side of it. What I'm saying is, some point Adam going to say, no, I could do this by myself. He's not relying from outside. He's got the voices there, but it's become part of him. He's no longer thinking riding a bicycle. It's reactionary from there. Reactionary is maybe is a wrong word because there's no thoughts behind it. Ability to respond to the situations occurring for him.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the mastery side of it, and that comes with playing. This is one of the reasons often now, recently, I start my seminars, I invite you guys to be a 5-year-old. Why 5-year-old? If I give you a little toy, you and I will 5. What does a baby do with a toy? He breaks it down, not because he dislikes the actual toy, because he's breaking it down to understand what this toy is inside is about. He wants to know, and we beat this out of our students. Standardization does that because we become specialists, but we cannot think. At some point in a match, he's going to have to think by himself. His cloudy pressure is on, his brain is a fight or flight mode. The whole network's not working. The speed of it within a match. Can he think by himself? Does he have the resilience we're talking about here to overcome that pressure? That comes with playing. For me, creativity is one of the biggest things. But I think creativity itself has got its genealogy. You can trace it back.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to work with Adam in that sense. I have to surrender myself there through hard times. We're just going to have to go through it. it is distance also. But Coach Kemp is there working it. But don't forget, he's gonna be working with one of the big coaches in America, isn't he? You know, Coach Steiner, right?
Yes, his head coach at Fresno State is a really well respected coach in the USA, and he'll learn a lot just being at the D1 college level in a program that has visions of having national champions. Fresno State's had national champions in the past. I mean, 3-time national champions. So they've had great success. It's in a part of California that wrestling is important. There's a lot of great high school wrestlers come out of that area. So I think they'll be very competitive, and Adam could be part of that whole rise to the top of this college.
Yeah. Let's I want to pick up on something that you just mentioned a few minutes ago, and something that you mentioned earlier before when we were talking about you training hard and everything, and about what the coach was saying, which is the resilience, or the resilience.
Resilience, yeah.
Wrestling resilience. So let's talk about that, because it is such an important topic. And to start it off, I want to know, in your opinion, whether resilience is attribute or a trait that you're born with, or one that you can and must develop.
That's a very good question, because I've got that question. Because I'm back in uni again, I'm doing my neuropsychology. I want to do my research now. We decided on this trip we're going to do a case study on Coach Kemp. I've got to get that question, what you just said. But I got the help of 2 sociologists from Bristol University. They happen to be my students. Carl Berry and Mark Berry, and they're going to be helping me out for my research. Just that, yeah. And also Tony Myers, we mentioned earlier. He's a good friend of mine, and he's going to help us with the mental toughness and what you said about resilience. And also my senior, Dr. John Eaton. So we want to be doing a study on, are we born with this, or do we develop it? Some people say if you willing to go through that hard work, you might amplify it. We all got different answers. It's not so clear.
Yeah.
There are studies that's been done, but definitely not towards wrestling, not towards grappling. We want to embrace it, because we're working with a lot of grapplers now. So I want to bring in within the martial arts of grappling based, part of MMA is there. Wrestling and BJJ, the scrambling sides are very similar. The mental tough preparation before the matches and stuff. We want to look at that, Yeah. So I don't want to decide on that. Say my opinion. I want to discover the answer might be.
Yeah. What about you, Lee? Do you as someone who to be one of the to achieve everything that you've achieved within wrestling, there must be a huge amount of resilience that you have, both physical and psychological and emotional, everything. Do you believe that was something that you were born with? Do you feel like it's something you developed through your training, or do you feel like something that you had to consciously try and create?
I think environment creates that some, and that's why I talk about my just my birth and going through the foster homes.
I feel like that gave you a lot of
absolutely.
natural resilience. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think without that, my total, I would be a different person.
It's almost like.
Can I just add something here? Because Coach Kemp has mentioned, that's the reason I said I've got a sports psychologist there. I got he's known for reverse therapy, but he's a clinical psychologist, Dr. Eaton. But I've got 2 sociologists, because I want to look at the environment. Because resilience, when we say, is reaction to the outside world, but it's psychological, physical, or within inside. But I'm more of a believer of the environment relationship with myself with outside. So if it's grappling, someone else is continuously putting my head down to break my back. Wrestling is a game of standing on your feet, not a takedown. You trying to take me down, I'm trying to go down. One of us and wrestling doesn't work on your knees. When you want to move, you just have to get off your knees with the speed. So it's just working under pressure. That's the bit of we want to look at, and that is wrestling. Environment for me is very important.
Yeah, so what you're talking about with and continuing on from the environmental thing, that you feel like your the circumstances of your upbringing and your childhood, that environment gave you the natural resilience going into, you probably had that resilience deep in you, and it wasn't until you started wrestling that was able to manifest itself in any capacity.
Exactly. I think the environment, like for instance, going into Dan Gable's wrestling room, just to survive that, you're going to gain resilience. Because if you don't, you won't be there. You won't even make the team. So if you desire to make the team and you're going through Gable's practices, which you can't do it any other way, you just figure out that I got to go through these practices. So you start figuring it out. One thing that might help you go through a tough practice might just be getting more sleep. That's changing your lifestyle around, changing your mentality around, deciding that, okay, I'm got to get the right kind of sleep if I'm going to be able to go through these practices. If you're not strong enough, well, I got to get stronger, so I got to get in the weight room. So you start adjusting, your just the way, like who you are to be able to deal with the situation. So you're in a constant state of becoming. You're never there. You're just becoming. You're becoming this idea. And it takes a great leader to create that vision. And everyone had vision when they were on the teams that I was on. Gable created that vision. In high school, my coach created that vision. He decided that, he thought I could be a champion, and for whatever reason, he thought I could. So I believed it, and my parents were very positive people. They thought I could do it. And so each day in practice, I tried to get better.
Yeah. And
I saw myself get better. I mean, the objective part of that is, you just see yourself getting better. It's like in school, if you're doing all the studying, pretty soon you start passing the tests because you remember the material. And why do you remember the materials? Because you've done the work. So it all is just a big puzzle that kind of fits together. And you only have the ability to do one thing at a time. So when you start doing all these things toward that one goal, then you're not doing all these other things. So you become very focused. Friends change. Like I've noticed even with my son, his whole lifestyle changed. I mean, from at the end of his junior year through his senior year and placing in the state tournament, it was all wrestling. And I don't think he planned it that way. I don't think he would have wanted, if it was left up to him to decide, I'm going to give up my whole life now for wrestling. I think that's hard to do for a young person.
Yeah.
I was able to do it for whatever reason.
Can I add something there? We're saying it's hard to do it.
Yeah.
Why am I doing it for? We heard from Coach Kemp earlier. He's saying that sense of belonging, the detachment was there. He wanted to prove to himself that he can. Then he got exposed to wrestling. That became his channel. Then when he go into the Coach Gable's room, if you overcome that, you got a resilience. He's got to have some kind of motive behind the pain and suffering he's going to take, to become a champion.
Yeah.
Is you're going through pain. And don't forget, with wrestling, there is no reward whatsoever. Yeah. Eventually you get a tap on the shoulder, well done. I never forget, I watched the interview and John Smith is talking about when he won the Olympic gold medal. When he came back home, they opened up a door, mother said, well done, they tapped him on the head. They sat down, there was no talk after it.
Yeah.
But often wrestlers just go through that. And another question is, why do we doing it for? We just like pain, But we see with Coach Camps was like, you overcoming that detachment. That's one of the things,
Okay, well, you know what? Let's continue on from that, which is moving forward a little bit. Yeah, you early on in your career, or before it was even a career, early on in your wrestling.
Sorry, Dan, can I go to toilet?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Should we carry on whilst you go to toilet? We'll keep it rolling. Yeah, we'll keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here you go.
Where's the toilet?
It's just next door. That's the advantage of having three guest hitters. Yeah. We can just keep going. Obviously early in your career, we've spoken about that and the reasons why you took to wrestling, why you strive so hard to be, because you wanted to be someone, you wanted a purpose. Fast forward to when you won you've won world championship 1 time, 2 times. At that point, you've already accomplished that first goal of being someone. That must change. As soon, you won state championships and you won national championships, multiple, ridiculous number of. As soon as you start becoming the best in the country, best in the world, all of those motivations from when you were younger, well, that's accomplished now. You don't need to worry. So at what point does that motivation subside and actually something else take its place? The thing that actually, I don't want to just be somebody. I want to be the best ever.
That's a great question. For me, around me, because I studied people so much, I saw champions win, and then that would be the only thing they would win. Which is a great accomplishment. Like they'd be a state champion and then maybe even have an opportunity another year, but then not win and then go to college and not wrestle or not make it. I've seen world champions one time. Not that that's a bad thing, but they entered 3 or 4 more world championships after that and never won after that. And so I didn't want to be like them. I wanted to be better than them. I wanted to prove that it wasn't something that was accidental or something that was I got lucky. Early in my career, people would say that because I hadn't wrestled that long and I start winning. And it was the idea I heard that, oh, well, people think, Lee, you just got lucky, or it was a weak weight class.
Yeah.
So it was a continuation of this feeling of wanting to be someone. I wanted to be someone different. I wanted to prove that it was not that I got lucky. I had a teammate of mine once challenge me. And when I was in high school, it was my senior year, and I had qualified for a national team that was going to compete in the nationals. And I got kind of sick right before the tournament. And it was, it was in the summer, so it wasn't like something you had to go to. But I trained hard to get there, and I thought to myself, there's no way I could be 100% because I'm not feeling that good. So I told my friend, I don't think I'm going to go because I don't think I can perform that well. And my friend got really upset with me. He said, Lee, it doesn't matter if you're sick. I still think you could win. But he said, I, more than anybody, wanted to see how good you were. I'm thinking, why do you want to see how good I am? And I went home and thought about it. And I thought to myself, maybe I should want to know how good I am. But then it gave me an idea how people viewed me.
Sure. A
lot of people were watching me then. So there's 2 answers to your question. One is you evolve and change because you become you realize a lot of people are watching you. So you're expected. There's a certain level of performance that's always expected. Just like if you go to a concert to hear your favorite entertainer, you expect a certain level of performance. It could be later in that performer's career, but you still expect a high level of performance. What got that performer there from their early days was very different than what keeps them there.
Sure.
So I wanted to prove that it wasn't just something lucky, because I remember how conversations would go about those other individuals I'm talking about that they did one, and
you didn't want someone to have that conversation about you.
No, I wanted it to be.
There's no doubt.
There's no doubt, and I could prove it. I'm the type of individual that if someone tells me that they can do a backflip, I'm looking for an open area that I can say, hey, why don't you just show me you can do that backflip right now?
Back it up.
Yeah, or like, yeah, I can dunk a basketball. Hey, there's a court over there. Let's go get a basketball. I want to see you do it.
Yeah.
So I have that kind of mentality, a prove it to myself mentality that I could do something, and I'll enter things not knowing if I can accomplish it. So it's a tough blueprint to try to lay over someone else. But I think it only happens if there's a coach or a teacher or a mentor. I had a teacher once in college that didn't think I should go into the business school to try to get a business degree. That teacher felt I should go into something easier because I was an athlete, viewed me as an athlete, didn't view me as a person that was smart enough to be a
So you must have got a scholarship to a college through the wrestling.
Yeah.
And then what a lot of college athletes do who have scholarships is they'll just they're there for the sport.
Easy classes.
And it's just easy classes just so they can, yeah.
And this teacher thought of me that way. And maybe I was trying to be totally fair to this teacher, maybe I was taking advantage of that situation a little bit by maybe asking for a special favor,
sure,
or something from the teacher, maybe to take an exam later or whatever, or maybe even a little more help on the exam. Teacher just held a standard and said, well, maybe you should change your major to something easier. And that offended me, sort of, because I thought, I'm just as smart as these guys. I just have to work harder. And so I ended up not doing well in that teacher's class. And I remember what it was. I was doing poorly in the class, and I wanted some special help. And anyway, the teacher finally said, "You know what? You know what his answer was to me? I was doing like a D level work, which is not great. And so I was trying to get a C, and he didn't think he said, Lee, why don't I just flunk you? Then you could take it again, and your new grade will erase the F." That was this teacher's response. That means it was like at the end of the year, I had to take that whole class for a whole other year. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So my focus was wrestling, get my degree. But then I went back to graduate school, and this professor was a graduate professor, and he saw me around the graduate school. He never would look at me. He never would acknowledge that I was there. I think that was wrong. I think an educator should embrace a student that does rise. That would have meant so much to me.
Yeah.
And so when I finally got my my MBA, I saw that professor, and I looked at him right in the eye, and I was hoping he would say something. Yeah. And he never did. He never did. And the way I think now, I would have walked over to him, but I was shy then. I just didn't. I wasn't very confrontational. But I was a prove it kind of guy. I just wanted to prove things that I could do them. And but that all comes from my dad too. My dad wouldn't allow me to do something half. If he told me to go cut the grass, if I had streaks in it or left some patches, I have to go do it again, and do it again and
Need
again.
that golf course grass.
And I realized that if I didn't do it right the first time, it's just going to take me longer to do this.
Yeah.
So I started to figure out what a good job was, So I knew what the standard was. And so then it was me. I had to decide, and I just could not do something that that wasn't going to have the result of something that was pretty good, And as a result, things that I really wasn't that passionate about, I didn't do very well at, And so when I formulated passion around something, then I had to be the best at it. I started focusing on the very good people in that activity, and I got to be the best at it. Like in graduate school, just like wrestling, I focused on the students that were the best students because you could tell they were answering questions, they seemed smart. So I just, the same way I did in wrestling, I started to make friends with the smart people, and we started studying together. I would ask. We'd be studying for an exam. I'd say, well, it's okay if I study with you guys. But I had to contribute, though. I couldn't just be there and leech off them. I had to be prepared. So I realized it's all the same. If you want to be good at something, you have to do the things that the good people were doing. And no shortcuts, And when I saw the way they were studying,
Same way you saw how Dan Gable was training.
Yeah, same in business. I had opportunity to own a couple businesses, and I got to know the other. It was in the auto industry. I was a car dealer. I got to know the real good car dealers, the ones that were really successful. I started to get to be friends with them. I started to do the things that they were doing, and it was hard. It was really different. I was here, they were there. I wanted to be there, so I started doing the things they were doing. A lot of it was going to seminars, reading books, gaining more knowledge, going to these what was called 20 groups, where all the best knowledge is being shared in this special group. You had to be invited to the group. Wow. First of all, anyone couldn't just be in the group. You had to be a contributor. So I had to find a dealer who would invite me to the group, and then I had to contribute. It was a lot of work. It was a lot more than what I really wanted to do, but I realized, but guess what happened? I became better as a dealer. We started to do better. Our dealership started to be in the top 20 performing dealerships in the whole metro area of Minnesota, so of Minneapolis. So the standard was always the same, at least to success. I realized there are no shortcuts here. The shortcuts only last for just an instant. You could get lucky and you could win. It could be an easy weight class that year.
But to be consistent.
You could get a dealership given to you by your parents, maybe. Not that that's a bad thing, because that was my goal. I was hoping that it just didn't work out for me for other reasons. But But yeah, good things could happen to you just because of your birthright or whatever. But to be consistent, I'm impressed with people that just want to kind of not throw away their birthright, but there's some famous actors who changed their last name because they didn't want
to be connected to famous parents.
They wanted their own success, and you're surprised that they are connected in such a close way. And I that's a good study, Saeed, to figure out why is it that people can want to do that. Why
was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, why do people want to prove things that it's them, and they don't want anything? They don't want any hands out. They don't want to inherit anything. They want to build it up from themselves. Yeah,
it's being individual, isn't it? I mean, one factor might well be, say, if you live in England or USA, is very capitalistic. Capitalism based on being individual. Is always embraced on that, and that's why you see, and even on I call it watered down psychology, self-help books, and it's not about a community. If you compare that with the North Europe, say, social democrats, they don't strive to be, just I'm the best. It's not about being the best. It's about redistribution. So social democrats, they got different sort of psychology there, but that's looking from economic sort of system, but microbiologists might have different answers, based on the studies there.
Well, you'd imagine that, something like money or fame, they're both signs of success and achievement. And if you inherit money or if you inherit success, that actually takes away your ability to be successful yourself, right?
Would you not say that there's a difference between making a table by your hands, that's what I mentioned about your father, about his garden, or going buying it?
Big difference.
Isn't a different type of feeling within inside you?
Yeah, but then if someone gives you the table, he's taken away your ability to make the table yourself, right? You don't need two tables. So some people want to go, you know what, I don't want the table, I want to build it myself.
You know what Adam said earlier? Very much so. I totally agree with that, by the way. When Adam said, about the pressure of the father, because I've had it, you get overshadowed by your father. In terms of my coaching came when people say to me now, are you Amir's son? I said, yeah, Amir was my father.
Yeah.
I changed the linguistic within that.
Yeah.
Just to not to say anything. I don't allow any negative thoughts to complete itself, because a line can become a sentence. Sentence becomes a paragraph. Paragraphs becomes a page. Page becomes a chapter. Next thing you know, got a novel of negativities going on there. There could be if I'm overshadowed my father, I'm not gonna strive for my own potential. So I just see as human being as we're like a bicycle. We just have to go forward. If I'm repeating myself, it just becomes boring. So we do like to improve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, changing the subject to something else that Adam was talking about that I wanted to get your take on, which was, he said about the mental block that he had against this one athlete, and how he overcame that mental block, and he did that through channeling, what would Dad do? So I kind of want to know, well, what did, and he brought up what I wanted to ask, which was, you channeled your dad thinking, what was my dad thinking? What would he have thought? How would he have carried himself when he was about to go out and compete against Dan Gable? For those who are listening who don't, we spoke about Dan Gable so much as your coach, but actually, and if anyone is listening, they don't know who Dan Gable is. Obviously, he's one of the greatest wrestlers of all time ever. He's an absolute legend, and he was that Dan Gable when he was when you were coached under him, and then it turned out that you ended up coming across him in competition. So when it comes to, the first question is, was there a mental block there? And then the follow-up, if there is, how did you overcome that mental block?
For me, when I was trying to make that transition.
When you were competing against Dan Gable.
By then, my mindset was formulated.
You're a different person.
And Dan Gable gave me the permission to beat him. He gave it to me 4 years earlier, though. He didn't know it.
Oh, really?
Because when the Russians were trying to find somebody, the Soviet Union was trying to find a Soviet to beat him, Dan said to the whole group, because we all knew it. We were all young athletes.
This is when you were at the training camp.
Yes. Yeah. This is when I was in high school, when I first made that transition. Dan Gable, it was the summer of 1972, when the Soviets put the word out that they were looking for. They were going to find a Russian to beat him. Well, Dan acknowledged that. We all knew it, and he commented about it. He said that he felt that anyone could be beaten. So why can't I beat this Russian? I've beaten these Russians up until this point. I'm going to train to beat this Russian in 2 months. And so anybody can be beaten. Okay, does that mean Dan Gable? Does he fit in? Does he anybody?
Sure.
So then I went on to become a state champion, beating the defending state champion.
And that confirmed it.
Yeah, it confirmed it. Anybody, and the guy maybe had a bad day. The guy that I beat to win the state tournament, but I beat him. Then I won it the next year. Then and one of my goals in high school or college, when I went to college, was to be the first freshman to win a national title. Back then in 1975, there hadn't been any freshmen that had won the NC2A title. And I made it to the finals, and I lost on a referee's decision in overtime, which they don't do those anymore. There's criteria that you actually wrestle for the win.
Sure.
Back then, they had 3 officials vote. It was a tie score in overtime. They had 1 official voted for me. The other 2 officials voted for the other wrestler.
Wow.
And so, I was always, I guess I would say, I was always striving to know that anyone could be beaten. So when I had Gable the next year, I just didn't, very similar to what Saeed just said, I didn't look at him as Dan Gable. I just looked at him as another opponent. If I would have looked at him as Dan Gable, it would have been maybe too much.
He was already Olympic champion.
Yeah, yeah.
How old was he?
It was 4 years after he won his gold medal.
Yeah.
He was 26.
Okay.
I was 18.
Okay. Wow.
When I wrestled him.
Wow.
And the reason why I wrestled him, he was making a comeback to make the 76 Olympic team.
Yeah.
He'd won a gold in 72, so he was just 4 years older, so he's still young, 27, I think, or 26. Maybe he was 27, but so I just could not look at him as Dan Gable.
How just out of interest, how did you come up to compete against him?
Well, he entered a tournament. He was making a comeback to make the USA Olympic team in 76.
What was the tournament though?
It was a college tournament. It was just
so
a college
he could, without being in college, he could
correct, yes.
Really?
In the preseason you can. In the preseason from like November to early December.
You could just enter.
Yeah, any open tournament. So a lot of the colleges, even now, like there's some open tournaments like the Midlands is a big name tournament you may have heard of in the US.
Yeah.
That's an open tournament. Anyone can enter that. And so colleges will send their best college athletes. Some older college wrestlers who graduate already may go. And then some Olympians may go just for the competition, just for the experience of a high-level tournament, high media coverage on top of that.
Yeah.
Plus you get to scrap with some pretty good athletes.
Yeah.
So Gable was doing that. He entered this tournament and the preseason. And I was excited about the fact that he was in my weight class. And when I wrestled him, it wasn't that I thought I was going to win necessarily, but I knew that there was a chance that I could win. That's a problem with a lot of people today. They don't look at life like there's a chance. Like I knew there was a chance, a good chance that I could win. And I knew I was pretty strong. I knew I was, athletic. I just knew a lot of good things about myself that I believed to be true. So I felt that if I do those things, then I got a chance to win this match. So I kept the match within that realm of consciousness. Like there's a chance that I could win this.
Never count yourself out.
No. And so as the last minute was winding down, I was ahead by a point.
Wow.
So I was like, I can win this. There's no reason. But the thought went through my mind, though, that I had to lose it because it was Dan Gable, though.
That was still there, but you had to push that.
I had to push that thought out because I realized that if I lost the match, everyone would say, Lee, you had a great match. You lost only by a point.
You didn't want it. You didn't want it. Yeah.
I didn't want that. I thought, I want to win this. I can win this. And I realized anybody can be beaten. Why? Dan Gable told me so.
You listened to everything that Dan Gable said.
He gave me the permission to beat him.
Yeah.
And isn't that true, though, that sometimes you give someone permission.
You don't even realize it.
You don't even realize it. You give somebody
capacity to say no.
And that was it. Like when people would say to me after I start having a lot of success, it's always questions are always thrown at you like, well, Lee, you're going to win another world title, you're going to win, you're going to beat, they just assume you're going to win. It's like in the United States in football, the New England Patriots, right? Everybody thinks you're going to win all the time. Well, they don't win all the time. They win most of the time. And Dan Gable lost the NCAA championship, even though he won 15 times. There were 2 times he lost through, I would consider, total luck on the other team's part. One of his wrestlers got caught and pinned. A match he was winning. It's just the way it worked out. And then another guy got upset the very first round of the tournament, who was the number 1 seed. Took those 2 unusual circumstances for his team to lose by a quarter team point. So that's how good his team was. But anyway, when someone would look at me and try to consider that I'm going to win automatically, I'd say to them, I stop them and say, no, don't say that, because I don't have a crystal ball, first of all. I would say those words. I don't have a crystal ball. I know that I train to win. I know that there's a damn good chance I'm going to win because of the way I train, but I don't know that I'm going to win. And I would just always say it that way. I don't.
It works both ways.
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
I want to win. I train hard to win, but I can't tell you that I'm going to win.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to win. So it just has to be. But you can't have that mentality unless you have some experience. And I gained the experience in the room training. You can't. But see, if people don't do the training, how can you, under the lights, perform? If I don't study and do all the homework, how can I test that time, get an A in the test? People don't want to do the work. They just don't. It's just human nature. They don't want to do, or they want to formulate what they think the workload is, which always is easier.
Yeah.
When I see other athletes I'm trying to coach, and I look at what they're trying to do, well, why don't you add this to it? That'll give you more confidence. And it's like, no, I don't really want to do that. I want to do this over here. And I just watch.
We get it with our project, don't we? You know, some of the stuff I was doing with wrestling, because wrestling is not a money-making machine and stuff. They're always asking, "Why are you doing it for?" You know, what is success to them? You know, first of all, wrestling is alive in me. That's something. You take that away from me, Saeed's not there anymore. You know, that's part of my composition there. And people are working with us. The uncertainty of it. You know, they come in there. They don't realize how much investment put in there, and people constantly thinking is expenditure there. You know, some of the things we're doing is that's uncertainty is there. We don't know who's going to succeed, but for me, it doesn't really matter. I'm still here. We're still together. So far, this itself is an achievement to be here. You know, and we get that quite a lot with my project. You know,
Yeah.
because let's say for the Gracie family, it didn't just come here. How many years has it took them? It started as a little small thing. Isn't it? BJJ itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The end product.
Yeah.
People want it instantly. And what happens at the end of it, when you make the wave, a lot of surfers want to jump on the wave then. You know what I mean? The ones who didn't believe in you. The ones that were laughing at you even. You know, that you get that with sports quite a lot, don't you? Because statistics of just winning a gold medal is just, it's tough. It comes down, are you willing to put the work in?
Yeah. So, you know, just out of interest, what was Dan like to you after the match?
Very
How
good.
many times did he lose?
He lost a few times in college after the season because Dan graduated from college in 1970. So the 1968 Olympic team, he tried out for that, as a lot of our athletes do when they're in college. If the Olympics falls when they're in college, like I was an alternate on the Olympic team in 1976. The year I beat Gable, I was an alternate on that Olympic team to the American Stan Desick, who won a bronze medal. So Stan did not make that team. Bobby Douglas made that team. So he got beat by Bobby Douglas and Rick Sanders, or Bobby Douglas, and a few other people. I can't remember. But it wasn't not many. Maybe 2 or 3 losses that year. I think he lost one other time in a freestyle.
It was very,
tournament.
very rare.
It was rare, and I only know this because I studied it. And then he lost his last college match to Larry Owens, which is like a big deal. It's like famous, that loss. It was like they consider that his only loss.
Yeah.
Well,
With the crowd, with the crowd.
yeah, because in high school he was totally undefeated. College, totally undefeated.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about his college career, when he was a true freshman, back then freshmen weren't allowed to wrestle. So you lost that year. You could not be a 4-time national champion.
Really?
Because they just would not allow freshmen to wrestle. So he could not wrestle college until his sophomore year, even though he was in college.
Yeah.
So that freshman year, he entered open tournaments, similar to the one where I beat Gable in. the distinction that Dan had, he wrestled some really senior wrestlers, former national champions, former national team and world team members, and he beat them all. And it opened everybody's eyes to how good Dan Gable was, because he beat two wrestlers. One was a 3-time national champion. The other was a Japanese wrestler that made the Japanese Olympic team. There was a lot of Japanese wrestlers that wrestled at Oklahoma State University. And so they were in the country training and wrestling. And Dan beat all these really, really good high-level wrestlers when he was a true freshman.
Wow.
But it doesn't get recorded because freshmen...
Sure.
So had Dan wrestled as a freshman, he probably would have been the first 4-time national champion.
Wow.
Because he beat all the guys. So he didn't lose any matches until the freestyle, trying to make the 68 Olympic team. He lost that last match against Larry Owings. And my match really isn't counted in that big total, just because
it wasn't like official season.
It wasn't official, and I think he had retired in '72. He was making a comeback. It was his first competition after his comeback. It was like his first, but he was performing well. He pinned a couple teammates of mine, or people that I knew very well, and I would only beat by a point or two. He pinned those guys. So visually looking at it, it was like, okay, that's Dan Gable. He's smashing everybody.
People say, he's retired and he's come back. He's 26 years old. He's not in his 40s. When you hear guys that retire and come back, it's not the same.
Peak of a man, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But we worked out after that too. He's got a book. I'll plug his book, Dan Gable 2. We talk about the match in that book.
Awesome.
And we worked out, just him and I, like Rocky 2. Remember Rocky 2, where they wanted to see. Well,
do the bell.
That's what we did. We wanted to work out just by ourselves.
That's awesome.
To work out. We did, man. We was just for about 2 hours one day. We just worked out. It's pretty cool. We talk about it in his book. And you never get the better of Dan in a practice, because practice is like an hour.
Yeah.
A match has a time limit, Because Dan never quits.
Sure.
So when I first wrestled him in that time when we were just doing the Rocky thing, I kind of thought he'd stop if we got on the edge,
He wouldn't.
No, he pulled me back on. We just kept wrestling. We were going like wrestling under the benches. It was like a fight, but it was a wrestling match.
Yeah.
And it was like no stopping. He wasn't going to stop until he tried to beat me,
Yeah.
So I didn't want him to beat me, so I kept fighting and kept wrestling. And we quit at the same time. It was pretty cool.
This sounds like the most epic, awesome thing that's ever happened in wrestling ever.
If that could have been video, that would have been something that would have been...
Wow.
But we just had too much pride to quit. We didn't want to quit. So after each go, we looked at each other and went again. After each go, after each takedown.
And you did it for 2 hours?
It seemed like 2 hours. It was more than an hour. Yeah. I know it was more than an hour. It was a long time.
And how long are wrestling matches?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. That's a lot longer.
So we quit at the same. We were both really tired. We couldn't barely stand up, and we looked at each other at the same time, and we could see in our eyes we both wanted to stop. So we just at the very same exact moment, like walked away from each other, and that was okay. That was like okay in both of our minds that okay, we can stop now.
That is so cool.
Awesome.
The
other day we were talking. I said God gave birth to his son.
Yeah.
Given a formula to beat himself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow. Very, very cool. Now, you know what? Going way back to the beginning of this conversation, we were talking about the stuff that you're doing with the grapplers and all of that stuff. Have you had much experience working with any athletes outside of wrestling? Any MMA guys and any grapplers?
Not much experience.
Yeah.
However, I had the opportunity to work with Dominic Cruz, who's really top MMA, UFC fighter, world champion multiple times. Currently working his way back up for another title fight.
Yeah.
Last year, I had the opportunity to work with him.
Very cool.
For about 3 weeks. It was an awesome experience, and I had the opportunity to work with Tim Kennedy, who was fighting at the time last year.
Yes.
And so this experience with Saeed is kind of a first for me, really, to really dig in and really formulate a real well thought out, systematic way that wrestling can be infused into all the martial arts. And to do it in such a way where people will come to us for this knowledge.
Yeah.
Because no one's doing it in the way that we're doing it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the dark drive stuff a little bit, shall we? Should we move on to that?
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about what the dark drive is.
Well, it's mental. Success, sure, well, there's the physical and all the other stuff, but the terminology comes from a place where people go to that dark place in their mind. When you think about maybe epic or great survival stories where people survive these seemingly impossible situations, and all these individuals talk about they go to this dark place where they have to survive, otherwise you're going to die, and you're close to death then mentally from a psychological standpoint. But great achievement comes out of that. So that's where kind of the terminology sort of comes from. The drive comes from a dark place that not many people can go there. But when you analyze it and teach it, you can teach people to go there because they're not going to die. You know, we're not trying to survive a situation that's going to kill us. We just want to have success in this. And I can think of going in the dark place, and every great achievement I've ever done, it was really difficult. I wanted to quit. I wanted to stop. I didn't want to do it anymore. What was the difference was the dark drive, was the way, the ability to intellectualize what I was going to have to go through, like walking through the fire. And most people say, I don't want to go through the fire. Well, you're going to have to go through the fire if you want this, if you want that success. Well, you got to go to a dark place to do that. That's not just normal, casual thinking. There's no champions that I've ever met that are normal or casual in the way they think.
Yeah.
Dan Gable was considered a fanatic, and I was considered a fanatic. But also, we were world medalists. Without the fanaticism, I don't think I could have been a multiple-time world champion. Winning the first gold medal, even I thought maybe I could have got lucky. But then the second one, I realized what I had to do that one. And then I won a bronze, and then I wanted to go back and win the gold again. So winning the bronze gave me the goal again to become a world champion. And that one, I had to go to the dark place. Out of the 5 matches, 3 were 1-point matches.
Wow.
Which is we've divided a talk in 2 parts. One is the blueprint of the success. The preparation side of it could be physical, having the right tools, and the preparation pre-hand, envisioning, I'm going from here to London, from Bristol to London, what things can go wrong, the preparation, familiarity with the problems.
Yeah.
So performing under pressure. So we kind of know what the match, you would know what things can go wrong against a guy you already been there with him or not been there with him with your BJJ. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not a sudden shock to the system. And I think coming back to our idea, why you doing it for? We want to know why our athletes are doing it for, to draw out their meaning behind their drive. Such as going back to the earlier talk, Coach Kemp will say, sense that I belong in there. That's so strong. He's proven it to himself. That's his drive there, but he needs the right tools. Right tools would be the preparation side of it, the success side of it. He had with Dan Gable's formula. That's the success. Then is the problems. Are we familiar with the problems? Have I been here before? For me to be reactionary, or my respondability. So we were talking about it. That's why there's 2 parts to it. Coach Kemp talks about that experience. And then we're talking about performing under pressure, which I'm doing.
And do you have techniques for developing these attributes?
Well, the research for us is very important. Within the next 5 years, we're going to be looking at that. Having said that, at the moment, they're drawing out the will to meaning. We're basing on Dr. Frankl's work, the logotherapy, if you look into it. So that's one of the first things I've given to Adam for him to start reading to Dr. Frankl's work.
What's it called? Logotherapy?
Logotherapy.
Logotherapy.
Yeah.
What is that?
Will to meaning. Logo in Latin means meaning.
Yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning, that was his book. He was a Holocaust survivor. Then he developed to become one of the greatest psychologists. He was a neuroscientist, neuropsychology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at the meaning from that side of it. Developmental side of it, we're just basing it on Coach Kemp there. you know, familiarity with problems. We envisioning what is the end of it, and we're looking at the problems. Then we work through it. Preparation for problems.
Yeah.
You know, for example, if Adam's struggling with his tiredness, we really want to know where it's coming from. It might not just be fitness; it might just be lifestyle. So it's more discovering rather than decision. So Adam says, write down what are you doing during the week? You know, what time you're sleeping. Then if it's not my expertise, I'll pass it on to the right person. It might just be nutrition. So that's not my expertise. I'll have to pass it on. So, you know, having access to the experts, then we got down our website.
Yeah. So you do the Dark Drive stuff as a talk?
Initially, to Dark Drive. Yeah, we did that last Friday. That was the first time we done it.
Yeah. So that's it's like a seminar, but you don't show techniques. You just do the
physical side of it. Wrestling works under pressure, right?
Yeah.
So neck preparation. Neck is a big thing for us. You know, so we had guys we call monkey on the back. So some guys hanging off you. So they're throwing each other around the waist and stuff. It's wrestling exercises. You know, an average person is not used to that.
Yeah.
So if you put an average person to a wrestling match, one of the things he will, have problems with is arching in his neck. So you have to prepare for that problem. That's a problem. When I'm just coming down on top of it, I can feel it's the strength, man.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we know that's one of the problems for wrestling. Someone catching you in a headlock. Am I prepared for that? If you're not, then it becomes reactionary. You know?
Okay. So, you know, talking about the mental preparation stuff, you know, for someone who's competed at your level, Lee, did you do much in terms of, we've spoken a lot about motivation and resilience and stuff like that, but in terms of actual mental performance training or anything like that, visualization or positive affirmations, did you do anything like that whilst you were competing?
Yeah, I did, absolutely. The visualization is key, and Gable's touched on that. He didn't even know he was touching on it when I was a young wrestler, but he touched on it. He talked about visualizing winning the gold medal, and it wasn't just this little piece of metal. It was the knowledge and acknowledgement that he was able to achieve his goal. The medal is just, most champions don't even know where their medals are.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, they know, but I mean, it's not like something that they walk around wearing their medal every day. You know, I mean, it's just the acknowledgement that they were able to achieve their goal. And let me just say this, not everybody's goal is to be the champion.
Sure.
I mean, it could be a goal like my son's, my son's goal just to get on the award stand after 2 years of wrestling was a huge goal. He was capable of winning it. And I think he knew that. Everything would have had to go right for it to happen. But and just the way it worked out with that one wrestler that he had this mental block with, he got upset. And so now he thought, okay, now at least, I know I'm going to place because my path is going to help me to place. And then now this one guy that shouldn't have lost now I got to beat him just to place now. Oh, the universe isn't working out for me. I'm not going to be able to place now. So it's that's kind of how life works. So you have to visualize. So he had to go back and visualize himself. I said I wanted to be a state place winner. This guy is here. Okay, what's it going to be? I want to be a state place winner.
Yeah.
So I got to find a way to make that work. At some point, everyone has to do that in their life. You've got to find a way when your belief system isn't lining up exactly with reality. You've got to go with your belief system still and not go with reality. The reality was that this wrestler was now I had to face. The reality was I've never beaten him before, but now where am I gonna put my focus on that or what I wanted to accomplish? So my purpose is here. That's how come people achieve great things. No matter what adversity is happening to where it doesn't make sense anymore, it's impossible. Instead of focusing on that, you focus on what your purpose is. Your purpose says, I'm going to win, so I must keep going. I must keep trying. And that's where we were in that discussion about trying, where trying sometimes is not good, but trying sometimes is essential to finally achieving the success. And I had the ability to visualize the goal still, or my purpose. My purpose was to be a state champion or be a national champion or world champion. It didn't matter that now I've got this adversity. I still have to get there. I like some of the analogies that Saeed made about it. If you got to get to point A to point B, whether it's London to Bristol, there could be all kinds of things that happen. There are people that give up after the first adversity. Oh, there's traffic. They'll make a phone call. I can't get there because there's traffic. There's other people who they'll park their car and go jump on the train.
The reason being, what we're trying to say about the preparation for a dark drive, we just driven and obsessively, we just looking at success, and that gold medal.
Yeah.
So they're the type of athletes. They just want to have a gold medal rather than becoming a wrestler. So if you're a good wrestler, byproduct of that is going to be your gold medal. So that's just a side effect of that. So we're saying, okay, there's two sides of that. Figure preparation. But when I'm coming in a good match with you, there's a lot of problems going to come in there. You might have come, might not be the same person. You spend some time with another coach. He's teaching you to just freeze me for a second. Out of that reaction, catch me. I've never been in that freeze moment. When you're doing the sudden think, do I circle away from that position? Yeah. Just really looking at the detail, all the things can possibly go wrong in a wrestling match, which we applied with, say, we did with Dean James, same success he had of it. We're going to do it with, say, BJJ, say with Leo Vieira. But we just had a concept, it was a hand fighting. What did we do? We were just switching from gi, let go of the gi, coming to the neck or coming to the wrist, gi and no gi, gi and no gi. We were switching it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
With the actual side of if I want the single, I was just pulling, which I call a snatch and catch. But it was concept rather than just the technique, because people just say, I want to learn a good single leg attack. Does it really work in reality? Do I look at the problems with BJJ, pointing systems and what's allowed or not allowed? Is it the same for MMA? Is it the same for wrestling? Because the neck is exposed, right? That's one of the problems with the wrestling side of it. You can get choked.
Yeah.
You give it extension, which one of the things I work on a base as a dancer, where my balance is. If you lose your balance, the technique is just not going to work. Have you done preparation for finding a balance when the opponent brings you out? That's what I mean by preparation of the failure side of it. How do we overcome that? I've been here before.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just lost. I'm familiar with those problems. One of them is you're resilient, holding on to the single. He's creating a gap. I got to close that. That's hard work. Has your body been there before?
That's what you're saying, the position over the techniques.
Position over the technique. I'm not devaluing technique. I'm just saying you can watch. It belongs to YouTube.
Yeah.
It looks good. It's market driven. It might generate some money for you, which is related to your training, is relational. Having said that, for you to understand that single leg attack, how is it going to work? You're going to have to look at 4 different, at least, the defense side to it. If your body moves to this side, my single leg attack, what do I need to do then? If my shoulder drops out, I need to drop my shoulder back in first for that single to work. Do I have an understanding of that problem? That's overcoming the problem. Okay, shoulder's gone now. Before I complete my single leg attack, which a lot of people try to use their power, move your base, drop the shoulder back in, close the gap. Once you're straight, then you're doing it. Yeah. Do you have a concept of body needs to be straight, hip underneath you before the leg attack finishes itself? But you can apply the principle of what can go wrong and how you're meant to be. But you said about the body movement. Body needs to be straight, hip needs to be underneath you. That's how we walk.
Yeah.
If he's out of that position, then you got a problem. We applied that with Dean James, popping the hips out so the head was coming down. Then you can bring the neck down easier, which they utilize the neck for dropping the knees in, as you know, in Muay Thai. But there's no difference there for getting a leg attack with, say, wrestling. But there are leg attacks I saw Jackson Sousa doing a single leg attack when I was in the Europeans watching him. He used the gi and he's done a single leg attack. There was no difference there. We're realizing within those positions, wrestling can be used. Then that's the infused side of it. But there are lots of problems. It's not just black and white and just one techniques.
Yeah. So have you done much training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or in grappling?
As a competing?
Just as in training or?
Training. I've been in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been familiar with it through Salvatore Pace for 25 years.
Wow.
But I've been in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu room since Braulio and Roger Gracie when they hired me. I've been in a room with them
So that's
most
given
days.
you a good understanding
Yeah,
of what,
and I'm a big believer of passive learning.
yeah.
You
By watching.
huh?
By watching stuff.
Watching.
Yeah.
And I want to deconstruct. I want to look at position. I'm not looking at just technique. Where is his shoulder position? Where is his head? Me and Adam was doing, as we were doing the color tie, I drop my head in. I just place it there. I win the head position. I'm fighting for my position. There's no difference there with BJJ. I'm constantly watching it because then I see the fusion between the two.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys, that's the physical stuff. Do you guys notice much differences between the psychological stuff between different combat sports, MMA, grappling? I know that there's between Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and wrestling, one huge thing is, I believe that wrestling has a massive advantage on is the work ethic that is built into the culture of the sport. You cannot, and there are some people who don't prescribe to the idea in jiu-jitsu that you're going to roll light and keep it playful and all of that stuff. Like you don't do wrestling light. You can't wrestle light. You've got to go in hard. You've got to be attacking, and it's a very physical game. In jiu-jitsu there's a lot, because there are so many different ways that you can do jiu-jitsu. You can be a 50-year-old guy doing it real slow and taking it easy and having fun. You can't really do that in wrestling so much. Have you noticed much more?
For me, I mean, my challenge was then I had to go in a room of BJJ that never wrestled before.
Yeah.
And I'm mainly working with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys. Okay. And I had to go there, give them a fast track of wrestling.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things they do, they think wrestling is just going brutal. What they don't realize, we do have play fighting too, which we call it drilling instead. So I stopped that. And one of the things it causes injury. Then they will blame me in wrestling. And when you see the statistics of the injuries, that is not the truth. But what they were going in, I just got to get this single there. But looking at the movement, one of the things we're not doing is that level drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. With level drop comes a lot of success with wrestling. So play fighting is a big part of it. Flow, and you see flow wrestling these days. Flow wrestling is very different to going brutal, just being on top and just breaking a guy down. Yeah. So the fast track is the key. Is that playing? Is that playing part of it, which people don't embrace it because they just want that double leg attack,
Okay, and working with the MMA guys, do you notice any different? Obviously, you coach wrestlers as well.
Not in a club setting. I do clinics and workshops only.
Do you notice, basically, if you had two groups come in and you worked with them, would you be able to tell that group were wrestlers and the other group were MMA?
Absolutely.
What's the difference you can see apart from the technical stuff? What's the difference you can see with them?
Well, the intensity is different.
The MMA is less intensive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Even MMA. Wow.
The wrestlers, well, a lot of the current champions are former wrestlers, like Daniel Cormier.
Yeah.
I mean, his wrestling has definitely.
He was an
Olympian the year I coached the Olympic team in 2008.
Really?
Yeah. And Ben Askren is another wrestler who's undefeated. Henry Cejudo was an Olympic champion in 2008 as well. And he immediately was at the very top of the UFC.
Yes.
Only losing to the very
I want to embrace an effect of say wrestling need is you need to have the work ethics.
Yeah.
So if Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu doesn't need that, so people they're relaxed about it. But if you see a high level, like your match, all of a sudden was kicking in, you guys were kicking in same intensity as wrestling. We watched your match, you know?
Yeah.
So if you say, look, I want to become a super champ, if you add that to you when you need it, when you switch on and switch off, then you just work ethics is just good anyway. Does that make sense? But because I don't need it, I'm not going to do it. Then there's a difference between this kind of champion or that kind of champion. He gets 10 gold medals. One is win, lose.
Yeah.
But you'll find that he will apply that. This is something we want to talk about a lot. The wrestling for humanity and wrestling for life.
Yeah.
Wrestling for life is I embrace that part of my work. Well, you know this when you go to work. You need to have work ethics. If you just haven't got it, they kick you out. It's just part of life. Life will take you down. You're going to have to get back up and just work through it. So having that work ethic, having the preparation and embracing it, I think it will come handy for many people. But whether the head of school takes that on or not, that's a different matter. But you've seen, for me, the experience of the relationship with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. Most clubs, they got wrestling coaches. Most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players are always calling up. They want to work with wrestlers. You know, I think he's developing. You know? Next 10 years might be different.
Yeah, you know, I hope so. I think there's a lot.
How do you see it?
Wrestling, I think it's very important. You know, I wish
Part
that
of BJJ.
Yeah, I think it's a massive part, especially nogi. I do a lot more nogi than I do. I don't train in the gi anymore at all.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it. You know, me personally, I don't have any base in wrestling, and for a long time I avoided kind of through the middle part of my my training career from sort of brown belt to black belt. Just before around about the time I got my brown belt, I injured my back. And I could carry on doing most things in jiu-jitsu, but I couldn't do any of the kind of bent over posture from. So I took some wrestling classes, and it just fucked me up.
Well, that's one of the things we really want to embrace on, and saying those brutal wrestling doesn't have to be there. You can do different types of wrestling.
It was, to be honest with you, it was just even bending over.
That's
you know, just being in a bent over, like changing levels, like really messed me up. But my back's a lot better now, and it's something that I think I really need to implement into my game more. You know, I'd like to find the time to get consistent wrestling classes in and kind of bring my level up, not to be a competitive wrestler, but just to bring it to a standard.
We missed our session, didn't we? We were going to work with each other before our seminars together. That you had an injury then, didn't you?
Yeah. You know, it's only. It's been I've had it for about 6 years now, and I've just managed it for the last 6 years or so. But in the last 6 months, I've been training it a bit more, and I feel like my back's a lot stronger. I'm kind of tempted now to start testing it with different things and trying to do a little bit more wrestling and stuff like that. It's definitely something that I'd like to implement into my game.
And in terms of our style, we want to look at, say, if you were in a position you were going, just utilizing a head position or just getting an elbow control. Yeah. You know, that to us, that's wrestling itself, not just the technique side of it, you know. Yeah. Do apply that to the BJJ.
No, I'd love to do some work with you at some point, you know.
We will.
I'm sure. Anyway, let's talk about something that you just mentioned now, which is the wrestling for humanity.
Okay.
So do you want to tell a little bit about that?
Shall I start it?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me go to the bathroom myself.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We actually got about 15 minutes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we'll round that up. Yeah, that's fine, yeah. See, I've trained it. You believe something. I've done 54 episodes now. I've never been to the toilet once.
Oh my goodness.
That's a true story. I've never been to the toilet once in any podcast ever.
I keep doing this. Am I doing it? The camera's affected by that?
No. You'll be fine. Yeah, that's true. I've never had the break for toilet. I've trained my bladder. It just whilst I'm podcasting.
Sorry if I went on my phone, but
that's all right.
That were messy.
That's all right, man. Don't worry about it at all. Should we wait for Coach to come back before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go, because he's involved in it. We want to take it to America. One of the things you mentioned on, you know, which is they just doing wrestling just for gold medal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're still on. Yeah.
Okay.
Just because we were talking about my bladder doesn't mean I'm going to edit this out.
I got weak bladder. Can't do this. Coach Kemp is always drinking his green tea.
Maybe I feel like maybe I'm just not hydrated, but I drink the water as well. So
we got water, you know?
Yeah, go on. What
it's a good son. Yeah, wrestling is just we haven't got the lifestyle. You know, if you look at my Facebook, compared to other wrestlers, it's completely different.
Yeah.
I'm always on the beach, you know, teaching wrestling is not just teaching just for a gold medal, just Olympics.
Yeah.
Teaching is with the BJJ guys. You know, I'm still having fun with it. And something else comes up quite a lot. People go to the wrestling room and say, "Oh, how old are you?" This was happening in Italy. They were telling me they go in the wrestling clubs and say, "We can't teach you." Why? Because you're too old.
Really?
So it's not that, you know, one thing you guys are in wrestling, BJJ for everybody.
Yeah. That
needs to come on board, you know. It's a sport. We're restricting it for robots.
Can it happen? Can anyone wrestle?
I'm one of those guys, Martin Luther King, you know. If you say tomorrow the world will end, I will plant my last apple tree.
Yeah.
I will go forward with this idea. And it's happening, you know, I'm growing. We're in 12 different countries, you know. I've scrapped affiliation. I'm doing collaborative programs, collaborative schools. So there seems to be a hunger for it with non-wrestling clubs. So isn't that a good thing? They're taking interest
in
into jiu-jitsu clubs.
Yeah.
Wrestling for humanity is completely different. It's you know what you said about, winning is about success and stuff always comes to it. We never get a medal for humanitarian values.
It's one measure of success.
One measure of it,
It's
one
right?
measure.
There's many measures.
Many measures.
Individuals.
Correctly so. I'm just going by your example. We never get humanitarian values, you get a medal for it. I'm not looking for a medal. I'm embracing Iranian wrestling where you reach a certain standard, you give back to society, redistribution it. So through my success of my coaching, I'm going to the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I suggested, Danny, will you be interested? We do a seminar together. Connection of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and wrestling. We're embracing that, but we'll give the money 100% to donation of, children got a very small time to live with their parents, and the charity provides care for home. So I've been doing that with a lot of Gracie guys. I did it in Hastings. So far with my event, it's called Rock and Rumble. Have a look online. We had a target.
Rock and Rumble.
It's an interesting story because they came up to me and I thought, you guys talking about WWE? I'm not getting involved in this. But the charity side of it was attractive to me. So after a little bit of, it wasn't an argument, but you could tell I wasn't involved. We compromised. We said wrestling moves.
Yeah.
Okay. 5 techniques max, keeping it simple. No groundwork, so it's more beach wrestling, takedowns only.
Yeah.
But they want to keep the costumes. I said before the match. So if we just develop something new, so there's a fusion wrestling.
You described it to me. It's white collar
wrestling. I think it's the first one. Maybe I could claim that.
Yeah, like pro wrestling, but like pro wrestling style, but also real wrestling.
But it's real wrestling. But you won't believe how competitive these guys were. They did not want to lose. Girls were worse.
Yeah.
Better, maybe say. I don't know what the right word, the terminology is, but they didn't want to lose. And they were intense matches, Okay, the skills wasn't that high, but the work ethic Coach Kemp talks about.
Was it entertaining?
It's online. Have a look. Go on Facebook, Rock and Rumble.
Rock and Rumble, yeah.
Well, have a look at this. This is quite interesting. We got, target was 5K.
Yeah,
35 competitors. They were bringing in £250 each, as a charity. We ended up raising £25,000.
Wow.
And 19 of that, I believe it will go to Timwa, the charity in Malawi. And they have a look online. It's too much to explain how much they're doing. One of the poorest countries in the world, It's just incredible. But we're doing a second one now in 2nd of June. We're recruiting on the 10th April. This will be my next project there. Again, so
for more wrestling.
For more wrestling.
Yeah.
Wrestling for humanity.
Yeah.
So Coach Kemp he wants involvement in this because it's about legacy and giving back for him also. So we're hoping we take this to USA. So if we get US wrestling involved, and they see what we're doing. Hopefully, but one thing we believe in our charity, all the staff will get paid. We don't believe in setting yourself on fire to make other people won't.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Okay, we might not make a huge difference, but it's still 25K for as one organization. I think is great. Embracing the fact that it's not just about gold medal. Embraces the fact everybody should be wrestling if they are interested. We don't push them back, and we don't have to be robots.
Yeah.
Not every person's got that Olympic gold medal dream, but we've made it that way. I think we channeled it. If you're not training someone, it doesn't have to be brutal. We made it brutal because they're surviving for that gold medal in the Olympics. Then and perhaps that's one of the reasons. I'm not going with 100% because I don't die for my beliefs. Bernard Russell, I might be wrong.
Yeah,
but. If you're just training for that, it's hard work.
Yeah.
More than likely, you will not get that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of us are lucky enough we get that gold medal, but it doesn't really matter. Look, I'm sat with one of the greatest. We're doing the same job. He's taking an interest in me to train his son, and his son tells me, Saeed, he comes strong with other people. No, he doesn't need that, and these are top coaches. That's a privilege for me. Is not a gold medal for Olympics for Saeed. I'm sat and I'm teaching in the same room that he chooses me for his son. So I'm saying we can do more with wrestling than we got. We can work with BJJ players. We could teach them when they're older. Make it a little bit more fun. Look at our clothes. just ugly. Look at you guys. It's just cool. I guarantee this. If two good-looking guys are standing, one is a BJJ player, one wrestler, if the girl comes in, straight away goes for the BJJ guys.
No way, man. Now you guys got the singlets. I'm bringing the singlets back,
I've seen your singlets. I like it. I'm saying embrace a little bit of lifestyle in there, you know.
I think that's that's one of the things that jiu-jitsu does very well. It does the lifestyle. It sells the lifestyle really well. Sells the idea of the acai and the shakas and all of the other stuff,
which creates job. I think Coach Kemp has taken on that.
Coach
Kemp, when you're coming back,
it does create a lot of jobs. It creates a lot of
the
power
lifestyle
brands
and the clothes and wrestling for humanity. We're talking about, but the conversation is going towards, you know, you saw that within me. What did you take on that through our experience?
Well, and again, I keep using. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? I have a talk that I give about that, and that gives meaning to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I taught thousands of wrestling clinics. Well, with meeting Saeed, it was more than a wrestling clinic once I started getting into it. When I saw what he was able to, create, and I'll call it that because it didn't exist before he got involved with it, the charitable work that was done through Teamwa,
Rock and Rumble,
putting wrestling into it. That's a creative thing that he did. I've never seen anything like that before. I wanted to be involved in it because it goes beyond my technical knowledge as a coach and as wrestler. It puts the effort that we're putting toward this into something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
To help other people. It's not about me, and not that it was ever about me. But there's a time as an athlete, you are kind of selfish.
You have to be, I think.
Yeah, because you are trying to win medals for yourself and
self-nourish.
Yeah.
But I want my legacy to be something way bigger than me, and I want my son to see it too. He's got the ability to. He's a writer, and you should see some of the things he writes. It's amazing, and I always tell him, life is way bigger than wrestling. That's why I wouldn't let him cut weight.
Yeah.
Cutting weight's a horrible thing in wrestling. But the effort that's been put forth already last year, I understand that this year it looks like it's going to be even bigger.
Yeah, we're aiming for 40 people. I mean, the guy's working with me. He's a little bit more crazy than I am. He's thinking about doing a wrestling event during the festival in Shambhala.
Nice.
So it was like, it's mad.
Yeah.
But he said if he generates money, we're going to donate, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
That wrestling for him. Our target is 100K. So far, with my, I'm on tour with this, the Wrestling for Humanity, as well as Rock and Rumble. It's 39K so far we've raised. So it's pretty cool,
Yeah.
That's powerful.
That's
powerful.
Well, I think this can come to the U.S. The concept is an amazing concept. You're using wrestling, real wrestling, but you're letting people have fun with it.
Not taking this too seriously.
Yeah, but they're learning. It's like CrossFit became a phenomenon in the U.S. for sure, but I'm sure it's here too. Yeah. Obviously, I've seen some CrossFit. It was just a new way to train, and everybody jumped on, and it became cool, fashionable. This could become cool, like even the way BJJ has become fashionable and cool, even in the U.S. Why not wrestling? And now, when you add the element to help people from a humanitarian sense, like learning what the money that was raised has done and will do for a remote place in Africa, Malawi. It's almost.
You must look at their website in Timwa, and it's phenomenal.
What's the website?
Timwa.
How do you?
TEMWA.
Okay.
Timwa charity.
It's humbling and emotional when you see that some people, I mean, you can conceptualize there's places in the world where there's no water and electricity and all that kind of stuff. But how do you really help? You may put a little check in the mail and you think but now when you're with an organization that you're going to really, really make a difference, the founder of Teamwa, right?
Joe Cook.
Yeah, we met her. Saeed introduced me to her and we met her. She's dedicated her life to doing humanitarian work. I mean, not just dabbling in it. I mean, she's in. it's her life's work. It's her legacy.
Yeah.
So to be able to be involved in
I wanted to heavily on part of Esmaeli Wrestling, but I wanted to get rid of the name Esmaeli because it was because I want to get away from logo, go towards the legacy. There's a story, there's a meaning behind it. It's not because I wanted to make this our project economically driven, not market driven. There's not a price tag for everything. And that's what I wanted my wrestling to be based on, which is the value system of Pahlavani wrestling, Iranian wrestling, Persian wrestling, where my dad and Ghulam Reza Takhti, the symbolic figure of this, they embraced. But we bring it out here. I think it's just great for wrestling to get recognized. We're doing more than what we just spoke about, just gold medal. I'm going to use one of Adam's poetry about legacy. Can you read that on top of your head? You have a phone? Are you okay with that?
100%.
Okay, I'm going to be using it on part of our website as being built about, the legacy. And that's why, if you notice, my so-called logo is changing this setting. It's not meant to be gold. This was a last-minute t-shirt.
It looks good, man. I like it.
The color of it. Yeah, should I pull this forward, Adam?
Yeah, go on.
That's okay. Take your time. Yeah.
Introduce yourself too.
Yeah.
Make it formal.
You do that.
No, he can introduce himself. He can just say,
No, I'm saying let him find it. Okay.
I'm Adam Kemp. I'm going to read a poem.
We need to do a little bit louder.
Oh, okay. I'm
Where you
Adam
from?
Kemp
Tell me where you're from, 'cause
from Illinois.
USA?
USA. And I'm going to be reading a poem I wrote. One day, my chain will be an artifact, my dog a fossil, and me dust. This room no more, but bricks, rubble, and rust. A path is made by walking on it, so no more paths will be made. Time will eat away at all that civilization has made. So why should I care about a grade? I guess it's my legacy, but that C doesn't define who we are, and it sure as hell doesn't define me. Our legacy is made in the things that people don't grade, the things we do to add meaning, show ourselves we are worth a damn. We get so caught up in studying for that exam that we forget that life is fleeting, and right now your heart's still beating, your stomach still needs feeding, your lungs are drawing in breath, and your dreams have not been put to death. The meaning of life is that it's meaningless. If you choose to bury the meaning in stress and obsess over things that only shadow over your passion, some people of fashion, singing, writing, dreamers, dreaming, innovating, creating, artistic, artists, photos, snapping, SoundCloud rappers, rapping, the audience will be clapping, card swiping while you smile, because you're doing what you love. That's what's important. It's all going to mean nothing in the end. Only your legacy survives the rubble and the dust, the bricks and the rust. It survives the test of time.
Awesome, man. That's pretty.
You see it there?
Yeah.
So I'm one of those guys, I say you're only a memory, Biggie Smalls. If we stay in memory for a right reason, and Coach Kemp has become one of our seniors, I really mean that because we lost our father, my dad. But Dad came to the country with speaking no word of English. Now there's a road in Bristol, which was his gym. They were going to change the name of the road by helping. Okay? Through his wrestling, he managed to help. We had WBC world champions working with him. The work ethic and stuff.
Yeah.
England rugby players, Andrew Robinson, Nigel Redmond, England cricketers. But all these, it was based on the fuel behind it was about helping. It was like humanitarian values there. So this is talking about legacy. So Coach Kemp is his legacy. We're keeping that. So we're diverting it with this wrestling for humanity. We're saying there is more to wrestling than just gold medal.
Yeah.
Let's embrace that together. At least our team's going to do it,
That's awesome. And, what a place to end the interview as well. Just before we finish, just let everyone know what or where they can go to kind of find out about all the stuff, the Dark Drive seminars, the Winning Gold stuff, the Infused Wrestling,
yes,
and the Wrestling for Humanity.
Thanks for that and for supporting us, first of all.
No, it's an absolute pleasure.
We're still developing.
Yeah.
So without you, and others to support it, this is not going to come through. So these are all contributions. Sometimes it's so scary for people to believe we're doing such a big thing, the uncertainty of it. But we're building up the website. It's on the go, it's uploading. I'm going to have to say goodbye to more people to find myself time to be able to do it, because time is always my problem. Coach Kemp was saying, Saeed, you need to get assistant now. It's in that stage. What we are in phase 2. So some of the information is being built there and put on there. But obviously our seminars. One of the seminars is tonight in Fight Zone. Sam Cook, who is one of my students, she spends time with me. She embraced that to bringing it to London. She's so 6:30 tonight till 9:30. But I think you're busy yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm teaching a seminar tonight at 7 o'clock. Yeah, this won't go out for a couple of weeks anyway, so the seminar already would have happened.
Yeah.
Probably next Sunday this will come out, which the people listening will be today.
And I'd love to wrestling for humanity with you.
Yeah, man. Yeah, let's definitely do it sometime. But is it so? Where can people find out about if they want to book these seminars? If they want to find out about, do you have a website?
At the moment, just Facebook, Esmaeli Wrestling.
Okay.
Esmaeli Wrestling Academy on Facebook. I'm working through that until the website goes live.
Okay. And Lee, what about you?
My website is leekemp.com. LEEKEMP.
I'll put it all in the description, everything like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, guys, I just want to say thank you very much for all three of you for coming. It's been really, really awesome. Just kind of, you mentioned Sam. I saw that she posted that you guys were doing a seminar, and I messaged her. I go, I'd love to have these guys on the podcast, and then we got in contact. So I just want to thank you guys very much for coming on, and it's an absolute pleasure to have all of you here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cool, guys. That is it. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to find out more about either of the guys, Esmaeli Wrestling or Lee Kemp, they're both on Facebook and on Instagram. You can also visit leekemp.com. If you want to find out more about the podcast, then you can go to my website, which is raspberryape.com. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter at raspberry_ape, or on Facebook or on YouTube at youtube.com/raspberryape. The video to this podcast should be up there. If you ever want to get in contact, you want to ask any questions, request any guests, anything like that, then you can email me. If you don't have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or anything else, then you can email me at podcast@raspberryape.com. That's all, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will catch you next time. Take it easy.